2014. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping matters. If you have a cell phone or electronic device, please either turn it off or turn it down. And second thing is, if you plan on addressing the board, if you could sign in with your name and address at the podium before addressing us. Our first matter before us is under continuances. This is ZB 2014-36. The petition's a special permit. The applicant is Nicholas Fotopoulos. The property is located at 1600 Middlesex Street. And the petition is the applicant is seeking special permit approval for a development located at 1600 Middlesex Street. The proposal consists of reactivating an automotive sales operation on site. The proposed project is located in the regional retail zoning district and requires special permit approval under section 12.6B of the Lowell zoning ordinance. Good evening, Councilor. How are you?
Members of the board, Mr. Janowitz. My name for the record is Stephen Geary. My office is located at 32 Church Street here in Lowell, Mass., and I represent my client, Mr. Nicholas Fotopoulos, in this request for a special permit for a site located at 1600 Middlesex Street in Lowell. As you know, this is a site that is zoned as regional retail. I think historically this site was commercial, and this business has been in existence in this property for, I think, over 40 years. I'm sure you're all familiar with that corridor of Middlesex Street, and there are several used car lots on that street. It seems to be the primary business for that area anyway. So Mr. Fotopoulos had this business for the last 10 years. His license lapsed a few years back, and he was planning on reactivating it and just going down and doing that, but he didn't realize, for whatever reason, that the zoning had changed to residential retail, now requiring him to request and petition this board for a special permit. It is an allowed use in that area, and Mr. Fotopoulos' goal is to continue that use. If he's approved here tonight, he would then have to seek a license to operate that business out of there, and then he would continue to do that and be able to spruce the place up a little and move his cars in and out of there. So I did see the comments from a few of the departments regarding, or suggestions from planning regarding issues with the sidewalk in front, and I just wanted to address that for a minute because I anticipate that you'll have some questions on that. I drove up and down Middlesex Street over the last few days, and if you can, if you folks have done that yourself, you would have seen that on the, I'll call it the southerly side, the side that Mr. Fotopoulos' business is on, all the sidewalks going down that whole corridor, all the way up to the mobile station, and then going the other way, are all they're in pretty bad shape. A lot of them are in complete disrepair. And Mr. Fotopoulos is, I think it's 50 feet in front of his, maybe even a little bit less, in front of his building, isn't as bad as some of them right next to his building. So that's something that the city owns that land. He certainly doesn't oppose the city repairing that. He would encourage that. It's interesting to note that the north side of the street is all concrete pavement and not the asphalt that's on the southerly side. It looks like the city had a plan, and I'm not positive, and maybe Joe knows more, but it looks like the city had a plan to repair the sidewalks in stages or phases, I'm not sure, but the other side looks excellent, and Mr. Fotopoulos would love that to happen to his side and all the way down the street. It does, interestingly, pick up at Mobile Station. They did have concrete in front of that where the U-Haul places are for probably 150 feet, and that looks good too. But the rest of that side of Middlesex Street seems to be consistent with that asphalt sidewalk being in disrepair. And as I said, Mr. Fotopoulos' area is not as bad as several others around there. I think some of the other comments that the planning department brought to your attention are the fact that the lot, there wasn't a lot of detail on the plan, and I would just suggest that he's only going to try to reactivate this business. There's not really a need for any additional planning on there. He has absolutely no intention at this point at all to do any amendments to that building whatsoever. And the building's in good shape. I think it consists of his office in there and a bathroom, and it meets all dimensional requirements. He's not seeking any dimensional relief at this point at all. And I don't think there's any necessary detail for drainage on there unless, as suggested by the planning department, he does at some point plan to do anything like that. And of course, if he did, there would be a much more detailed plan to address that. There was also some concern that some of the cars were coming out onto, I think it was Searle Street to the, if you're facing the building to the left, and I think that's a street that's not accepted. I don't think it passes all the way through, but that street seems to be in a little bit of disrepair from the middle of it all the way to the end where that residential home is, and it just seems like through plowing or winter weather, the street has kind of fallen apart as it abuts Mr. Fotopoulos' property. But he would also encourage anything to make that look better. There seems to be a little bit of a dip on the street as it ends into his property at that point, but that's the only thing there that's that I think is significant. There was a suggestion about some striping, but if you look down Middlesex Street, where all the used car lots, there are very few used car lots with any stripage at all, because from what I understand, it's not practical in a used car lot. You're moving cars all the time, and they're not really designated spots in a particular area like you would for, say, a restaurant or, you know, a mobile station or a Wendy's or something like that. It wouldn't really lend itself to the purpose of selling used cars and how they have to kind of get them in and out of there. So if you look at all the other used car lots, that's something that you will note, that I think there's only one on the whole street that has any striping at all, and that, I think, is an auto body place as well. So Mr. Fotopoulos is here simply seeking the special permit in that area, which is an allowed use, and when he gets the permit, if he gets the permit, he would then be required to meet all the requirements to get his license, which would be his next step. So I'm happy to answer any questions that any board members may have regarding this, and I appreciate your time.
Okay. Well, I think, as you know, this has been before us probably 3 times. I've been continued 3 times. I'm not really sure why it was continued that many times before. Nothing's changed since we received the original documentation. So, so if I hear what you're saying, Mr. Gary, based on the city's comments, you're not recommending any changes at all based on their observations. Is that correct?
Well, I guess I would want to know what the proposed change are. I don't think the suggestions were unreasonable at all. I just don't think that they make a ton of sense for what's going on here. If I could see that if Mr. Fotopoulos was going to make any amendments to that building at all or do any kind of development at the building, but he's simply not. What he's done over the last few days is he's repaired the sign. There was some damage to that sign hanging off. It didn't look good. He's repaired that. He's cleaned up the shrubbery in the back as best he could. He wanted to clean up all the shrubbery underneath the sign where there's some overgrowth there from the summer that it wasn't cut, but I believe that U-Haul may have some ownership rights and a sliver of that, so he just wants to clear it with them. He's happy to do it. It will take him 15 minutes to do that. And then his goal is to and I think there was another comment that cars weren't registered, and I think that was just a notation to say that. A used car lot, my understanding is that they're not registered. They're not supposed to be, because you just get a dealer plate, and then, you know, your cars come in, and then somebody would buy them, and at that point they get registered. So I went by all the other used car lots. I didn't see any plates on any of the used cars, you know, anywhere in the city. So I don't know, you know, if that comment was meant to say that they should be registered or just noting that they weren't. My guess is it was just noting that they weren't. And I can't think, based on his request for just a special permit to reactivate that use, I can't think of any conditions that would be reasonable or make sense, other than, you know, make the sign, there was a piece hanging off, he fixed that, things that he's already done. But, you know, we're open to, obviously, the board's suggestion as well as Mr. Jinowitz.
Okay. Where's the customer parking going to be on the plan?
If you look in a used car lot, and especially on Middlesex Street, and that was one of my questions to Mr. Fotopoulos, people come in, and there's always 2 or 3 spots that they park in, and that's just, it's a lot. That's how they do it. There's not, a special area for customer parking or anything like that. There's just, it's not the way the business works. So he doesn't have 10 or 15 people there at a time. He's there as the owner and not there all the time. And when it's up and running and he's there, a lot of people would call by appointment or somebody would stop by. And when they stop by, a lot of times they just park on the side, they look around, and they get in their car and leave. But I had the exact same question for him, and the explanation seemed to make sense to me that Mr. Fotopoulos provided to me.
Okay. And Joe, just a question for you. The side street that was commented on by the petitioner, I know when I drove down there, I went as far as I could go, and I think there's a residential property, 1 or 2, that are actually behind this business.
I think one's across and one's behind. I think that's
but there's one
on Searle
actually,
Street, and then the other one at the end of Searle Street.
There's one, I believe, right behind the property, which is one of the reasons why I looked at the back of the property. I mean, there's cars all over the place over there. They're not really in an orderly condition. I understand the business hasn't been running, but is that street, what's the situation at that street? Is it an accepted street? Is it a...
I don't believe so. I believe it's a private way,
Okay.
but not a city street.
So with that said, can anybody park on that street? Because I know there's a business, a restaurant right next door. So what's the issue with, obviously, the restaurant may be a different issue because people, if they parked and they get somebody parking on the street, then they can't back out. But who enforces parking on that street?
Generally with something like a paper street or a private way, anybody that's adjacent to it would be able to pass and repass. They're really not supposed to block that private way, so then that way, in the example you brought up, one of the residences in the back wanted to be able to get to their property, they could do so by traveling up and down that private way. So you can use that space to pass and repass. There really shouldn't be anything blocking that private way area.
Okay. Would you know if the city plows that street?
I'm not sure, admittedly.
Okay. Which is one of the other reasons I wanted to ask about the parking. I wouldn't dispute people just driving up, kind of jumping out of their car, checking out the lot, and then maybe leaving. But if they're not parking in the lot, then they're probably going to park on that, I guess, unaccepted street, if you want to call it a private way. So I just wanted to understand what the conditions are with that. Can people just, if he starts getting a few customers and you got 5 or 6 cars parked there, is that going to lead to a phone call from those residences? I don't know, but I don't know what.
I asked Mr. Fotopoulos, have there been any issues with that? He just told me now that the city does plow. That's his recollection. Is the city does plow that street, which makes sense. I think the city still plows streets that aren't accepted if they're, adjacent to those public ways. And I think he has a plow himself, so he's always been able to work with it. I don't think there's been any reports by neighbors of any disputes that at least he's aware of, that he's made me aware of. So, it's one of those situations that I think is common on Middlesex Street, that there's, somebody has smaller lots. I think this lot's 10,000 square feet, but there is room on this lot for, obviously, him to pull up, or if he has another worker there, or anybody else to look at a car. I pulled in there, and there was still another room. Don't get me wrong, it's congested. There is, if you go in the back part, there is area for maybe 2 or 3 cars that aren't there now. But I think once he gets up and running, the plan is that he can move out some of those cars, make some space, get rid of the cars that he doesn't plan on selling, if there are any, and kind of reorganize the place. It's to his advantage. Somebody who is a potential purchaser for a vehicle is going to want to come into an area that's neat and orderly, and that's his goal. And I think it was always neat and orderly, except it's been neglected for a period of time while his license has lapsed. And I understand about the continuances, and he came to me, he wasn't sure exactly how to proceed with this. He's had some health issues that he just was dealing with at that time, which is the reason for those continuances, and was actually thinking about another one, and then I told him I could get involved, and I didn't think it was a good idea to keep continuing this matter. It's a pretty straightforward matter, so.
Is there any plan to do any automotive repairs on site?
None. That would require a license, my understanding. So it's just auto sales. If he ever, or he or anybody else on the street ever wanted to do that, they would have to apply for the, the appropriate relief to do that. But right now, it's not zoned for that, so I would say no. And I would agree to that
Yeah.
as a condition.
Yeah, so the License Commission would have
License
to handle
Commission,
that, right?
and he's going to have to go there anyway to get his license if this is approved by the board.
Okay.
And I'm sure that he'll have to abide by all the rules of any licensure.
Okay. And does he have an idea of how many cars he's actually going to have on site?
It won't, I don't think it will exceed what he's licensed for.
So, Joe, is there any regulations on number of cars on a site, how that works? And does that have anything to do with this board?
Not a whole lot. The parking requirement is based on the number of cars that are sold. There have been special permits in the past where the board has put a restriction on the number of cars that can be on the lot for sale at one point, which at that time, when somebody is to go for their license and it is issued, that is incorporated into their license. If there was a number that the board was looking to limit the number of cars for sale to, that would be on the license that the License Commission would issue.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anything else?
No,
Counselor?
I think that, he wouldn't and probably couldn't exceed what's on the lot right now. I mean, there's probably room for maybe 5 more cars, but if you move his car in there and a couple of customers, there's not a lot of room there. But most of those lots on Middlesex Street are full, and that's the point. I think they have cars in and they have cars out. So if there's a spot, there's another car that could be listed for sale there, and they move them in and out. And I understand, I went by several times myself, and I saw what you saw in the back, and some of those cars just, it's not a pleasant sight, but it's a car lot, and his plan is to improve that, to move those cars out, replace them with newer cars that are gonna sell, and get his business up and running. And there has been, a lapse for quite a while, and, sometimes, a businessman has issues that they just have to take some time and deal with business things, and I think that's what he's been doing, and he is eager to get this place up and running, and I think it's been there. It's been a car place for, I believe, over 40 years. The Fotopoulos family has been businessmen in this family for decades, and, that's, they work in this city, and they pay taxes in this city, and they live in this city, so it's just another businessman trying to get his special permit to operate a business that's already been operating there, that's entirely consistent with the master plan, and that's entirely consistent with that whole corridor of Middlesex Street. So we respectfully ask that the board grant the special permit.
I guess, yeah, I do have one other question. I know you mentioned about the sidewalk area, and you mentioned that side of Middlesex Street, that the pavement was different than across the street.
Yeah.
But what about the lot itself? There's no plan at all to do any repaving or resurfacing?
There is. His plan is to completely do, to make it, a really nice lot, but one thing has to happen first. So we'd have to get the special permit, and then he would have to get the license, and then he would have to get the cars ready for sale and then sell them to produce revenue to be able to put back into that. So he plans on doing that. And he's the first one who understands. The perfect lot would be a newly paved lot, and it just looks better. And, there's some lots that are in worse shape on that street that are doing a good business, but his plan is to do that. But he can't commit to that now because he doesn't have that business has been inactive, so he doesn't have the financial wherewithal at this point. But that is definitely his intention.
Okay. Okay, I'm all set. I'm going to open it up to the public at this point. Does anyone here like to speak in favor of this petition? In favor? In favor?
In favor or against?
In favor right now. No one's here in favor?
Yes, I'm in favor of it.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
I live behind it
Okay,
for approximately close to 20 years, I guess, 1909, so 17 years, so 16, 17 years.
you're directly behind his lot?
Exactly.
Okay,
So, some of the car been there since I've been there. Okay, so you mentioned yourself, Mr. Chairman, that you drove by the cars all over the place. Some of it, with broken windshield, flat tire, and everything else. It's been there for 10, 15 years. I'm not here to speak against the license itself, the permit to sell or the license to sell. I'm just here to ask what the license consists of, or the permit to sell consists of. You know, because the car, to me, is unsellable. It's not, nobody gonna buy that car. It's been 15 years, nobody gonna buy that car. So, I mean, I don't wanna live beside a business that doesn't take care of the business itself. I mean, that's.
Yep.
I mean, I'm getting ready to move. I mean, me and the wife getting ready to move because it's an eyesore for once. Property value gonna go down. I mean, my friend have mentioned my house next to a junkyard. I told him, no, it's not next to a junkyard. It's basically a used car lot. But when you look at the car itself, some of it worse than a junkyard. You know, the top, I mean, the cover, the engine exposed, and everything else. So, I mean, I'm not here. I want him to get the license. I want the business to grow. I want him to sell the car. The car that he have is unsellable.
Now, you came the first night of the meeting, right?
Yes, I
You
did.
were here the first time, yep.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I mean-
Anything else you want to tell us?
Excuse me?
Anything else you want to tell us?
No. That's all I'm asking is, I mean, the car. We got to do
So
something.
since
with the
you've
car
lived there
itself.
that many years, you ever had any issues with people parking on, we're going to
No,
call
I
that
mean,
street? Yep.
people are friendly. We have no issue at all.
Okay.
I don't have issue with Nick.
Yep,
I don't have an issue with him. I only have an issue with the car itself. That been there for 15 years that I've been there. That does not move anywhere. That's engine exposed, flat tire. You know, people seeing that and throw the garbage over there. People that eat at Chinese restaurant just throw in garbage. I told my son, my daughter to pick up the garbage, try to be neighborly. And that's what I did. And the car cannot be there. I mean, it's unsellable. It's haven't moved for 15 years. Another 15 years it's gonna be there if we're not gonna do anything.
okay,
So
Thank you. Thank you,
that's
sir.
it.
yep, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, can we just get your name and address for the record? Sir? Can you just state your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Vin, V-I-N, last name N-O-U-N.
Thank you. All right, anyone here that'd like to speak in opposition? 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 Hearing none, that portion of public hearing is closed. I'd like to open it up to the board. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Joe, you had mentioned, or the planning office mentioned in the memo we got back in July, when this first came before us, that the city has been working with the owner to try to get them to reopen the business. Can you go into a little more detail about that?
Sure. So a number of tickets have gone out to the property owner because of the number of unregistered vehicles that are currently present on the property. And as the fines from those tickets have accumulated, we had brought it to Mr. Fotopoulos' attention that this particular lot where the license had lapsed, he could seek a special permit to reinstitute his business if that's what he is seeking to do, because the property had been abandoned for over 2 years. Once something is abandoned for over 2 years, that use is no longer valid, so he didn't have a valid use for the property. And that particular type of use, a used car lot, requires a special permit in this district. So it was through some enforcement that it got brought to Mr. Fotopoulos' attention. And at that point, we had a conversation with him on what his options were to try to reinstitute the business on the site.
Thank you, Joe. A few more things. If, as it stands, this is essentially a private property with several dozen abandoned vehicles on it. If, let's say someone in another neighborhood had one abandoned vehicle on their property, the city has the right to either tow that vehicle or ticket them and have it towed, because essentially it's a lot that's been empty for 2.5 years now with dozens of abandoned vehicles on it.
Right, with any abandoned, unregistered vehicle, the city can go in and can ticket the property owner where that car is located.
A couple things, Attorney Gary, that you mentioned, I think in this case, I want to say aren't really relevant, and that's the condition of the rest of the street. I think each time, let's say U-Haul came before us to reapply for a permit, or the restaurant or the used car dealership across the street, they would have to go through the same process. I think what we're talking about tonight is just the condition of this property, not the surrounding sidewalks or streets. I mean, the property was abandoned over 2 years ago, and just since it came before the board in mid-July, so it's been 3 months since the initial petition, I think. July 14th was the initial petition, or at least that was the day we got the memo from planning. So, I mean, my concern, and this is a situation that comes up across the city, whether it's a single-family home or a rental property or a business, people walking away from a business and then leaving the residents or other people doing business on that street to have to deal with the property. So I just have concerns even if we do vote to grant this permit again, that anything will happen to the property. Because I've gone out there each time that it's come up on the agenda before we knew that it would be continued, and absolutely nothing was done. I mean, there's literally cars in the back with trees and shrubs growing through them. And I guess you said that those were cleaned up just within the last couple of days?
Well, some of the shrubbery around it, I didn't say that, I mean, I did see what you saw as well. And I think his intention is once he gets, if he gets this special permit, he would then start the process of reactivating the business, meaning he's got to get the license first, and then try to clean this place up and move cars out that he can't sell and sell cars that he can sell. And, I understand your point. And just to go back a second to clarify, what I brought up about the sidewalk, Mr. Pegler, was only in reference to comments made about the sidewalk, and the sidewalk, and in the context that the sidewalk is owned by the city. So he has no authority to repair that sidewalk. He's got no standing to repair that sidewalk. I understand that, you can request that, or you can suggest a business owner do that. And the only reason I brought up other properties was because if you look at his property, it's consistent with the others. My point was, the other side of the street is all beautiful concrete level, and this side of the street isn't. And I don't know what phase, if anything, the city is into repairing that. But I don't think that the part of the sidewalk in front of Mr. Fotopoulos' property is as a result of Mr. Fotopoulos' neglect. I think it's a public sidewalk used by the public, consistent with everything in that corridor. I do agree that his lot, the rear part more particularly, needs some work. I agree with that. I mean, clearly, and I agree with all the comments made by Mr. Noon about that, some of those cars don't appear to be saleable, but he's got to do something, reactivate this business to do that. And I understand your point, too, to Mr. Jinowitz about, if you use the analogy that this is just a private house now because it's not activated, then the city has the right to do that. And I agree, technically, they do have the right to ticket and to tow if that's what they want to do. But, I mean, the only thing I would suggest is, does that make a lot of sense here? Does that solve the problem for Mr. Noon or for the city? It seems to me that what would make more sense is give Mr. Fotopoulos another chance by way of a special permit to get that business up and running and to give him an opportunity to be able to move that along and do what his plan is there, to relieve the eyesore. If nothing's done with it, what happens with it? I mean, I guess the city could go in and do that. Now you just got an empty lot that everybody's going to think is just a dumping ground. So, I think that would be a little bit, a little bit of a harsh move to tow cars and to just say that's it and that's the end of it. And I don't think, that makes a lot of sense as a man that's been in a business in the city for a long time. I think, at the very least, I would respectfully request that he get another chance. I understand, your frustration, and I understand your frustration that there were 2 prior hearings that were continued. But, all I can say is that was out of the control of Mr. Fotopoulos, and that's why I'm here tonight. So I'd be happy to answer any other questions you have.
Yeah, a couple other things. So the discussion around the sidewalk, and I'm not an engineer, so I can't say that the damage to the sidewalk in front of the property was done by Mr. Fotopoulos or just wear and tear, but it looks like the sidewalk in front of the property was essentially used as a driveway or a ramp to get vehicles on and off the lot. Those vehicles that are lining the street, the only way they could get, in my view, looking at that lot, they can't be backed into the lot and pulled out onto the side street. So it appears as though the sidewalk itself was being used as as an access or an entryway to the lot. So again, I'm not an engineer. I'm just, as a regular person
I think that
looking
makes
at
sense.
it,
It
it
probably
looks
is
like,
what happened to a certain extent. I mean,
So-
a lot of those places, I think.
Oh, and I'm sure, and again, a lot of if any of those other places come before the board again, I'm sure we're going to have the same concerns, whether the city is responsible for the sidewalk or the access or not. If anyone else, abandons their property for over 2.5 years and then wants to reactivate it, I myself, if I'm still on the board, will have the same questions. Another concern that I have, and you sort of alluded to it in your own comments, is that whether we do or do not approve this application, I'm concerned that nothing will happen to the site, and that it will either, certainly if we deny the application, it will remain in the condition that it's in for the foreseeable future, and that even if we do grant the permit, the special permit, that just in light of the fact that it took 3 months plus the 2+ years that the site was abandoned for anything to happen is a concern of mine. The last thing I wanted to mention, and I notified DPD of this fact, but back, I guess it was Labor Day, actually, I'd gone out to the site, and Mr. Fotopoulos was in the office that day on the phone, to all appearances, waiting for customers to come onto the lot and look at used cars. So I don't know if you probably have no knowledge of that, if Mr. Fotopoulos remembers that morning and wanted to speak to that, and then I'll...
I'm not sure, but I do know that, no cars have been sold out of there because they can't be. I mean, whether he's talking to somebody about other unrelated business, I don't know, but, are you suggesting that a car was sold out of there, or just that?
No, I'm not suggesting that. I'm just simply saying that on Labor Day, it was the second or third time I personally had gone out to the site, because each time the petition was continued, I went back out to the site, because I assumed that maybe some shrubs would be cut away, or weeds, or a few cars would be towed. The site was in the same condition month after month. I happened to go out there the morning of Labor Day. I guess I had nothing else to do that long weekend, and like I said, that Monday, Mr. Fotopoulos was in the office. So I was kind of taken aback, because it just, I'm not suggesting he was selling a vehicle, but it just seemed unusual to me. It was 85 or 90 degrees that day on a holiday weekend. So just, I guess, for the record.
Okay. And I know, I'm not aware of any cars being sold out of there or him operating that business at all. The only thing I could say, Mr. Pegg, it's a main thoroughfare in Lowell. If he were operating his business, it's right across from DPW, right? There's all city people around there all the time. The neighbors there, there's all kinds of people. Anybody could blow the whistle on that, and I would be very surprised if he was operating as a business out of there. Whether he was in there using his phone or what, I don't know that he doesn't have a right to do that, to be on the premises. But, I could understand why that would concern you, too,
Okay, and again, I'm not suggesting that he was. I didn't see anyone else on the property. I didn't see anyone looking at vehicles. It just seemed odd to me.
Yeah, I agree.
So, no further questions or comments, Mr. Chairman.
Sean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Geary, let's get a couple quick questions. First of all, how long ago is Mr. Fotopoulos' license? How long has it been since it's been lapsed?
I think it's been more than 2.5 years. I think
So
it's...
Since the property has been
It's
abandoned?
been at least that long.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does Mr. Fotopoulos have any employees that work with him at all through the business, or
In
is it
that
just him?
business? No, he just himself.
And I got to say, I share the same concerns that Mike does. Since I've been on the board, it's been on 3 times already, and I've been out there every single time hoping to see if something's been done, and nothing has been done. I mean, granted, I haven't gone, I went late last week. You said some things have been done recently. I didn't see them, but I guess one of my concerns is too, I mean, I understand this is the first step in many processes and trying to go through those processes, but I mean, maybe you can ask Mr. Fotopoulos. I mean, at this point right now, the business has been abandoned for 2 years. There are numerous cars on there. How many of them are really operable enough to sell? I mean, he doesn't have a license to sell them. They've just been sitting there on the lot for so long.
Right.
I mean, does he have any product to even sell at this point?
Yes, the plan would be, so his plan is, and I had the same questions, and believe me, when I was sitting where you are, I had and have the same concerns that you have, and I went over this with Mr. Fotopoulos because they're reasonable concerns. And his plan is there was a lapse, things happen, and you get sidetracked with other things, and then now has a vested interest. Obviously, he owns that property, he owns those vehicles on there. It's to his benefit to spruce that up and start moving those cars along. And if he can't sell a car, or like Mr. Noon said, if some of the cars, in his opinion, are not even saleable because they're not operable, well, then those cars he can take and put somewhere or junk them and get money for whatever they're worth as junk, create some room, move the cars, get his license, move those cars along, and be able to put money back into the place. I don't think it would be unreasonable for the board to put a condition on saying that he's got to get on the ball. I'm not sure how far the scope of the board's authority goes with that, but I don't think it's, as long as it's a reasonable condition, I think it's acceptable, and a time frame to do it consistent with, him having to apply for the license. And then I think the license board will have further requirements. So I think there are a couple of layers of protection that can address, both your concerns, and I'm sure all the other members of the board's concerns, and Mr. Janowitz, and the neighbors' concern too. I mean, it pretty much comes down to somebody had to get him off the ball to do this, and I think it was the planning department by way of, getting his attention with some ticketing, and I think it worked. And that's why I'm here before you tonight, asking for the very thing that was suggested that he do to reactivate that business. And, I realize that it's been inactive, and I realize that there's, issues with some of the cars in the back, and, but he has been a good neighbor there. He's been there a long time. He doesn't have any enemies. There's been no land disputes. There's been no disputes about move your car, move. Everybody kind of gets along, and there's only a few people in that whole area on that street. It's a dead-end street, and there's one other house across, and there's no problem with that. They plow each other out when they can. I mean, there's not a lot of bad except neglect with the property because the license lapsed. And again, I know I sound like a parrot, but that's what we're trying to do right now, is reactivate that. But it is not unreasonable, in my opinion, for the board to put a condition on with a time frame.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that's my thinking is, apparently a fire has been lit under Mr. Fotopoulos at this point now, after it's been dragging on for so long, that really would like to make it strict conditions upon making sure that Mr. Fotopoulos stays on the ball on this. That being said, I mean, how much, I mean, with this, if the board grants the special permit, how much time do you think it would be then for Mr. Fotopoulos to then proceed to get his license with the reinstated and the next step?
Well, I think the first thing would have to do, and Mr. Chairman and Mr. McCarthy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the appeal period would have to lapse. I mean, he's not doing any construction, so the only risk is his time and effort of cleaning the place up, which I think that he would do as much as he can before the winter gets here. And then it's just a question of how long it takes to get before the license board. I don't know if Mr. Janowitz has any insight on that, or what the next step was. And if I can help him with that, I'll help him with that. I mean, it's a time frame, I don't know. I think it would have to start from the end of the appeal period, and then, maybe 30 days to apply for the license, I think is reasonable. And then to follow any requirements that the License Commission, the regulatory authority, imposes upon him to do that. You know, and I don't think the city is prejudiced in any way by that. I don't think the neighbors are prejudiced in any way by that. And I think by doing some conditions like that, it kind of, you know, narrows down the time frame and kind of boxes Mr. Fotopoulos into having to do something, which seems to be everybody's, you know, common goal here.
All right, thank you, Mr. Geary. I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Sean. Dennis?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I have a couple questions for Joe, but before I start, I'm just appalled by the mess that's on the site and the fact that it's dragged on for 2.5 years, and it's labeled a junkyard by your neighbor. I'm sorry, by your neighbor's, your neighbor doesn't label it a junkyard. Your neighbor's guests and friends label it a junkyard, which is the furthest from a sales lot for cars. That people don't typically go to junkyards to buy a car that they want to drive. So if it looks that bad, anyway, Joe, what is the difference between a junkyard and a sales lot? I mean, do we have requirements for sales lots as far as how they're maintained in the city?
That's a very good question. I mean, I think kind of some of the things that were brought up, like the car being usable to actually be able to be taken out on the road, would be something that would label a car as being as part of a auto sales versus something that would be part of a junkyard where it's obviously just going to be used for scrap. In terms of things such as appearance of the lot, a lot of auto sales businesses are required to get a special permit in front of this board. So it's pretty reasonable if there are certain conditions that the board would want in terms of landscaping installed or other things that the board would like to see in terms of the appearance of it and screening from residential or any other neighboring property, that those kind of conditions for appearance sake would be appropriate conditions that the board could place upon such a project.
What causes the license to lapse? Is it the fact that no cars were sold, or how does that, they had a special permit and then there was a license, is it just not paying fees for the licenses, or what causes it to lapse?
Essentially, keeping the license renewed, whether, I don't know if there's some sort of annual fee or some sort of registration that has to be done on either some sort of regular basis, say annually. But it was something that wasn't done for over 2 years. And once that happens, then the license was no longer valid. And once it was over 2 years, also the use is considered abandoned.
And so the neighbors on that site have lived with a site that has sold no cars for 2.5 years and yet has 30-plus cars parked there. And parked badly, you know, parked, and some of them are parked from the photographs here in the right-of-way and not even on the property. And they're not maintained. It's just a wreck. And to entertain providing a special permit for such a careless attitude towards the neighborhood for the last 2.5 years, I'm not seeing it as being a good neighbor, that this could have happened for this long. The pavement itself, the site doesn't seem to have containment of gas and oils on the site, yet it has cars parked on it. So you have potential ground contamination from vehicles. Isn't that a requirement that any vehicles be stored in a manner that you can contain any dripping oil? I mean, used cars kind of drip oil typically.
Yeah, typically you're not supposed, it's a requirement in the city that you don't have cars parked on a pervious surface. So you would have to be parked on asphalt. You wouldn't be parked on grass or any other pervious surface where, as you mentioned, any kind of, anything can leak into the ground and cause some contamination.
And so we had 2.5 years here of cars parked. I'm kind of wondering why the city hasn't towed them by now. Why haven't we got around to taking care of this problem for the neighbors?
I'm not really sure.
I don't know. I really have a hard time giving a special permit or releasing the renewal of a special permit for someone that's been so careless with the site, with the location, with the neighbors, and with their own license. So let your license lapse for fees that causes this whole problem to exist? I don't understand. I don't understand why we would take this seriously, because if you're going to sell cars out of this, it's very frustrating.
Well, I think, and I agree. I mean, I can understand your frustration, but I think if you, this one time where there's control over it, where before there wasn't. I think, and Joe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't it zoned commercial, and then the zoning changed to the RR, and then during the time when he bought it, then this time now, and I think that was an issue, and he didn't realize that it was changed.
I don't see how zoning enters into this. The license hasn't been functioning for over 2.5 years, so there's no intent to sell cars out of this facility for over 2.5 years. It's not even a zoning issue.
Yeah, well,
And
I
there's
mean,
no intent, this has been abandoned for the neighbors to deal with for 2.5 years.
right, and, you know, as I said, that if you put the ball in his court and you put reasonable restrictions on, it does something. It gets it going, and then there's recourse.
The requirements that the city wrote, I mean, landscape the darn thing, pave the darn thing, take care of a few weeds. It's not asking for a lot.
It's not.
You
It's
know,
not,
and as my fellow board member stated, that sidewalk could have easily been having more wear and tear than people walking, because it's probably been used for vehicles to come in and off the lot.
Right.
And to take care of the sidewalk that you damaged is kind of neighborly for the city. I don't know. I'm not hearing anything from you guys that, you know, you want to make this right and pave the darn thing now and landscape it and make it beautiful like this corridor is supposed to be by our master plan for this corridor. I mean, you just want a special permit grant. I'm frustrated. I'm sorry. I have nothing for
and I understand.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Van?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, you know, like my colleagues, I am a little frustrated with this whole process. You know, so Middlesex Street, this whole corridor, this whole strip, it's kind of a gateway. It's something that the city is proud of. You know, this corridor, the Plain Street corridor, it's kind of a booming intersection for business and retail. And you know, this specific business, it's just been, like a speaker said before, it's been an eyesore. And you know, I know Mr. Fotopoulos probably, you know, means well and doesn't want, you know, any issue to problem, but for all intent and purpose, he did this by not maintaining his property, maintaining his business. You know, I went down Sale Street and I spoke to a few different people, and you know, they're very upset about this whole business. They just think that it's something that shouldn't happen in the city, especially this strip of Middlesex. This is a big business strip, you know, and I do agree that, you know, I feel like I have no reassurance that this would be right at this wrong. So if you can just give me kind of a roadmap. So he gets approved tonight, he gets approved by the License Commission. So, you know, it's the winter season, so we probably won't do much. So next April, May comes, spring comes, what happens, Mr. Gary?
Well, I think if he got his license, he would operate the business as it was operated before. He would move cars out that he could sell and remove cars that he couldn't sell. And I think that's to his benefit, because, you know, the better the lot looks, the better chance he has at selling those cars. I mean, if somebody goes to what has been characterized as, you know, looking more like a junkyard, they're going to look to buy junk. And if he's trying to sell cars there, and it's a prime spot to sell cars, if he's trying to sell cars there, it's to his benefit to have it look good, and it's not beyond the scope of your authority to impose reasonable conditions about, you know, the condition of the property. I just, you know, my only comment to that is that there are some financial restrictions he has to do that until he gets up and running. So, you know, I don't know what requirements are for the license, what they might impose on Mr. Fotopoulos, but, you know, if he has cars there that it's determined that aren't saleable, and there's no reason for them to be there. I agree. If cars are not saleable, then they're junk, and they belong in a junkyard, not a used car. So if there's no intention to sell those cars. So if there's any cars that are deemed, not sellable, or, there's no way that they could be sold, or they're scrapped, they should be removed, and that might be a condition that the board can impose. I mean, anything that is reasonable makes sense, but I would just respectfully ask that you consider that the, financial circumstances right now don't allow for Mr. Fotopoulos to remove all the cars, pave it, all perfect paving, fix a sidewalk, put curbs in or whatever, and then say, it's just not possible right now. One thing has to happen first. And, I sensed the frustration on the board, and I anticipated that, and I brought that up to Mr. Fotopoulos. I went to his shop a couple of times, and I pointed out the same things that all of you have pointed out. And, he has assured me that those are things he's going to address. Why he hasn't, up until this point, why he let the license just lapse without renewing it, I don't know. That's an oversight, neglect, I don't know. But, everybody doesn't do things perfectly. And I would have done it differently. All of you, I'm sure, would have done it differently. But we're faced with this lot that's here right now that has no permit to operate for its intended use. And I just would respectfully suggest that if the special permit were provided with reasonable conditions, it's a step in the right direction. Otherwise, it could be held up for years, and that doesn't benefit, Mr. Fotopoulos. It doesn't benefit any of the neighbors that you spoke to, Mr. Peck. It doesn't benefit any of us that drive by there all the time. It doesn't benefit anybody. It just kind of creates a stalemate in a sense. And what happens after that? I mean, I don't know. Cars get towed, litigation ensues. I don't know what happens. But, looking at it in a reasonable manner, you would think that if he was given the opportunity to use that business as it was intended to be used, and even if you want to call it one last shot, however you do it, because I understand, Mr. McCarthy, why? I understand your questions. Why should we? And, I think my only answer to that is because you have an existing parcel there that has the cars on it, and its only use is a used car lot at this point, and if it's not going to, if those cars, if something isn't done, and I think that's why the planning board suggested or, encouraged that he go and try to remedy this situation, he takes responsibility for the neglect. But we're here trying to do something to move in the right direction to do it, and I don't think it should be open-ended. I don't think it should be, yes, a special permit, and you know what, hopefully he does what he's supposed to do. I agree with you. I mean, I think there should be reasonable conditions put on to ensure that there's activity over there, and that if it's going to be used as a used car lot, it is used as a used car lot, and it's not just a special permit that sits there. I mean, that's not why I'm here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Gary. Like I said, I won't belabor the issue. I do strongly agree with my board members, especially Mr. McCarthy. It's something that, I'm big on second chances. But I feel like I have no reassurance if I approve this, like, will this be fixed? Will this be done the right way? But those are just my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Well, I guess I've heard plenty of discussion. I don't think things are going in the right direction for the petitioner, but, so Joe, I guess after listening to everything, especially about the license, so why is it coming before us first as opposed to going to the License Commission? This gentleman goes back to the License Commission and see if he can get his license back to start with. Why are we dealing with the site first and not the License Commission?
It's usually the standard practice that the use be addressed first. So anytime there's a type of business that requires a license.
Okay, so when you say the use, so the business that was there is a proper use there, correct?
Well, right now, there really is no use for the property because
Okay,
it's
so we
considered
could sit
abandoned.
here and say, we don't want we don't think it's right for a automotive business or a used car business. Is that what being asked of the board?
Generally, if an auto sales business is appropriate for the site,
Okay.
this particular auto sales.
So the other
business-
thing I have is, if the license commission has certain regulations to grant the license, so when this gentleman lost his license, they don't remove cars as part of that?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
So when somebody loses their license, obviously, they're in possession of inventory. They don't have to remove from the site their property?
It's not something usually the license commission would go out to have removed.
So why didn't the license commission have the cars removed?
I'm not entirely sure.
Right, so now we're back to the site, because the cars are still sitting there. What my point is, if the cars were removed, I think we'd be looking at this a little bit differently, if it was a vacant site. So I've gone through this before since I've been on this board, why it comes to us before somebody else should have taken care of something. So you're saying this is the way we're gonna operate?
That's the way that it's
Okay.
always been carried out, whether it's auto sales or whether it's auto repair.
So we're voting on, or we're considering this based on bringing back a used car lot.
Generally, this auto sales business, whether this auto sales business makes sense for this site.
Okay.
And can I ask, through you, Mr. Chairman, Joe, Mr. Junowitz, are there requirements that the license commission would put on him as well regarding this property, based on what you know about it?
From what I know, for the license commission, if they want to impose any sort of conditions, that it would be tied with the license. If the ZBA were to put any conditions of an approval, those conditions are rolled into the license. It's kind of similar to how this board and the planning board operates. So a lot of times when a petitioner is required to go in front of both, the planning board has to act first, and any conditions of the planning board is rolled into any approval of this board for a project. It's similar in that this board is intended to act first, and then any conditions of the zoning board gets rolled into any kind of approval that a license commission would issue.
So my point in asking that is, I think that, there would be two levels of protection, whatever reasonable conditions this board imposes upon Mr. Fotopoulos, as well as any conditions that the license commission imposes on him. And there's two levels there, and there's two, at least there'll be, I would think considerable oversight from the license commission as to what's going on that property. It's not the Board of Appeals' job, and not within, your interest at all, to monitor different properties after approval, but there are boards there are licensing authorities that is their job to do. If I'm correct, Joe, is it that if a license is issued, that somebody would ensure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, in general?
In general, yeah. Again, when a license is issued, there is the annual, or I believe it's annual, renewal of a license, and showing that the business is still active, it's still functioning. And with this particular business, it did not happen. The license was not renewed for whatever reason it was.
Well, I only ask this because after listening to everything, and again, this isn't the first time we've had something, and I sit here and I say, why is it coming before us? Because I might as well just say, well, okay, accept it, and let them go to the license commission, then they deny them, then what do we do? Then what happens?
Then the project cannot go forward if the license
So
commission.
what's gonna happen to all the abandoned cars?
At that point, it would be whether or not the property owner wanted to have them removed.
Well, which
or
hasn't happened in over 2 years, this is why I'm asking this.
Or otherwise, the city could continue the ticket or to go in and tow the vehicles themselves. And if a fine amount continues to go unpaid and gets up to a certain dollar amount, the city will lien the property.
Yeah, because I'm assuming if he's denied, then now there's a piece of property there. Does your client own the property?
He does. He is the sole owner of the property, from my
Okay.
understanding.
Because, if I look through the special permit, and, not to make this a long story, but if I look at all the requirements of the special permit, he meets certain criteria, but there's other things that I guess are in question, Counselor, like the environmental section that they refer to. I know Dennis asked some questions around that. I really didn't hear too much on that because of I'm going to call it the current state of the property. and what's been exhibited in the past, so that may have some issues. You know, traffic and access safety, I think we already kind of went through that, but how about a dumpster on site? Is a dumpster required on site, Joe? For this type of business?
Not necessarily. It would depend on whether or not the applicant were looking to have, we're going to have trash that required a dumpster, or if they were going to have some sort of
Yep.
rollout tote.
What's his business hours going to be, Mr. Gearing?
I'm not sure. Can I consult with my client?
Sure.
Typically, they're Monday through Saturday, 9 to 5.
Okay, so.
Well, it doesn't
no,
have lights, it's not open, you know, some of these
Well,
places are open all night.
that's- I didn't notice any lighting,
Yeah,
because I think if we get into lighting, he's open at night, where's the light's going to shine?
right, and we know that it gets
Residential.
dark at, you know, very early, pretty soon, so his,
Yep.
you know, it's pretty much a daytime
Sure.
business.
Well, I didn't hear anybody ask the question. And Joe, we didn't receive any other comments from any other departments, police department or anybody else
No, Mr.
regarding
Chairman.
this, correct?
No.
Okay. And you mentioned that the area is an abandoned use, is that what we're saying?
The property, yeah, it's considered abandoned at this point. There's no active use for the property.
Well, I think when I first started this, things don't sound like they're going in the right direction, and I'm not trying to put out a lifeline there, I'm just trying to make sure we're voting on what the true conditions are here. I mean, my personal opinion, the License Commission needs to clean this up. Now, if this gentleman's denied, I still come back to, so what happens with the property?
It's a stalemate.
And I know you don't have the answer, I don't have the answer. I'm just foreseeing what happens if he goes in there, or he goes in there and they approve it. I would like to see them get rid of a lot of those vehicles. I think they have to go. I don't know how else they can give them the license. But again, I'm not on the commission. Maybe they won't say that. I think the area obviously needs to be cleaned up. That's if it's going to be, you know, he wants to give it a run again, but, and the paving that I asked about, and I know we didn't talk about green space. I didn't hear anything about, you know, trying to do, is there any plans to do anything with?
There are
I'm
some.
not asking to put a lawn in or anything,
Right,
obviously.
there are, in the back, there are some, as you can see from the plan, there's a canopy of trees. It actually, I think, once the lot gets cleaned up, the shrubbery that's kind of grown wild gets cleaned up, it will look pretty decent there. There's an overhang from Mr. Noon's fence, and there's some trees right around the building that are, you know, decent trees. They do need to be trimmed up a little, but they're decent trees. It's not, you know, that's not an area where it lends itself to a lot of shrubbery or anything like that,
No,
so.
it
Or a
wasn't
used car
discussed.
lot is not, wouldn't look right, I mean.
Yeah,
But
Yeah.
certainly cleaning the place up, my client would agree to do that, do the landscaping and remove any excess overgrown shrubbery, remove any cars that are not saleable, and make sure that there's no leakage of any vehicles. I looked around from what I could see, and I'm not a mechanic, but I think my client is a mechanic or does something, not a mechanic, but he does auto work. I'm sure that's something he could make sure doesn't happen to that lot, and any leakage, if the thought is that there's oil or some other chemical that may be leaking into the pavement, that can be addressed. I mean, I don't know that, I asked if there were any complaints about that, if there were environmental issues, and I'm not aware of any, so I don't know that that's an issue. I understand, you know, old used cars might have some issues, but, you know, there was nothing that I could see, and I looked, but it's not my area.
Right.
It's not my expertise, and I haven't heard anything, any environmental sanctions or anything like that, at least that I'm aware of.
well, the other thing too is, like I mentioned at the beginning, this was continued, I believe, 3 times. So this is the first night we've actually talked about this, and believe it or not, we're talking about a business that's been there for many years, and we've been going pretty long on this, but not that it's not important, but like the environmental thing. So Joe, if I asked to have the city go in and do an assessment of the area, is that something the city can do? Would the city do it?
Could definitely explore that. I don't know how often the city has done that for a particular property, but we could certainly
Well,
work
if
with
it's
the
gonna be put on
applicant.
this board to make certain decisions, then, you know, I just assume continue it, and I might even ask council to continue it if we can work on, maybe you can talk to your client about some other mitigation plans, some other things that haven't been talked about. Like I say, this has been put off 3 different times.
Right.
And I really thought we would be done, but now we can definitely take a vote, but I'll leave it up to the board members also, which way you want to move on this. I'm just speaking for myself on some of these areas, so. Yes, Dennis?
Through Mr. Chairman, I'd also like it, I like the idea of continuing this because we always want to give people a second chance, even though I'm mad as heck about the condition of this for so long. I'd like to understand the reason for the license to be not renewed. If the License Commission had issues with the lot that were recorded, I'd like to understand if that was the reason for the license not to be renewed, or if it was other circumstances, if there's any record as to what caused this to be denied 2.5 years ago. Does anyone have that document with them?
No, I don't. I was getting my counter, but I do, I do think that, what my understanding, it was denied, the license wasn't provided because of non-renewal. That's the information that I have. Is that, was there any other reason that the license wasn't renewed, other than you just didn't renew it yourself? Okay. So I'm not positive exactly what the issue is with that.
So I guess, Joe, I'd like to try to see if we could reach out to the License Commission to get some reason why it wasn't renewed, if it was the License Commission themselves that decided, or if there was something else.
And I think that makes sense. And if we get those answers, then that could be part of the conditions, you know, that this board, if the board decides to approve it at a continued hearing.
Yeah, so we can have that. Joe, if you can look into the city, taking a look at the site. So the other thing, Mr. Gary, I think would, you know, not to tell you what I think, but I think somewhat doing something with some of those vehicles should be seriously looked at before we meet the next time, whatever it takes. Anybody else have any other things we want to take a look at?
I have a quick question, Mr. Chairman, I guess
Yep.
for Joe. Let's just say, for instance, we added a condition on approval that the certain cars had to be removed by a certain date. Like, I'm just making it up, December 31st. Who decides what cars are unsaleable? And let's say nothing is done for another couple of months. Can the special permit be revoked, or is it too late?
Yeah, so in the event you had some sort of condition like that you're describing, I guess we could go about it such that we could get an inventory of what vehicles are on there, whether or not the board would like the applicant to make a determination as to which vehicles are not saleable, or whether or not you'd want someone independent to do that. You could have a determination made and then have a deadline for when those vehicles that are not saleable to be removed. If they were not removed by that date, you could make it conditional such that if they're not removed by that date, they have to come back to this board, or that the special permit is no longer valid.
No further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Well, again, as far as the vehicles go, I would hope that falls to the License Commission. They must have some type of conditions, policies, procedures of what a licensee has to do and what they have to maintain. I don't see where it belongs. I mean, no disrespect to you. I don't see what that's got to do with us. If we're talking about the use for the site, you know, and the vehicles are part of the site, obviously, but I don't see where we can, I'm just making a suggestion for the next time you come in here, you might want to see what your client can do for the site.
Okay. I think that makes sense. I
All
mean,
right. Anybody else have anything else they want to ask of?
Yeah, I have a quick,
Sure, go ahead.
quick comment, Mr. Chairman. If you would, Mr. Garrett, if you could talk to your client and maybe just some kind of plan for maybe kind of fencing or something that'll help just, it's a little bit, from the neighbor's perspective, I think it's somewhat of a distraction, seeing all those vehicles. Is there something you could talk about, maybe fencing or some kind of siding, something just to make it
Yeah,
look a
you know,
little more?
good point. I meant to mention that too in my original presentation, but on the rear abutting Mr. Noon's property, I believe it's Mr. Noon's fence that's there. It's in good shape. I think that I think it's not faced the right way, the fence is. I think the rough side is facing my client's property, which he has no problem with. I mean, usually I think the requirement is that the rough side faces the homeowners who owns the fence. But that fence is already there, so there is a shield. It's all the way along the back that I can see. It has all the partitions, and it seems like it's in good shape. And that the only other property is across the street, so a fence wouldn't do anything at that point. And abutting on the other side is the U-Haul, and the cars are kind of, you know, that's the part that's in least disrepair, to be honest with you. The part facing the U-Haul and the U-Haul facing this part is not bad at all. It's more towards the back. But there is a fence there. I think the issue pretty much comes down to cleaning up that very rear quadrant would make a big difference
Yeah, I would
to that
appreciate
property.
So thank you, Mr. Gary.
Did you record the open items that we talked about?
Yes.
Can you just read them back, please? I know I didn't write them down. I guess the chairman doesn't do any work.
In terms of items that you would like to have
Well, the
reviewed by
things
next
that we
meeting?
discussed, I just want to make sure we know and Mr. Gary knows what we're asking for. I'm sure Mr. Gary wrote everything down, but I just want to make sure.
Yeah, so there was the environmental concerns that the board had in terms of any vehicles that may be leaking into any pervious area. Reasons for why the license was not renewed. And we also have, there was generally the question about vehicles to be removed. We could try to get some more information as to how that determination is made for the next time this petition is found on the board, if the board would like that. And then basically a plan for screening from adjacent properties.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody? All right.
Could we push it out 30 days, 2 meetings to just to
Well,
get?
I was looking at the calendar. Do you want to do November 10th, which, this is what, today's 16th, right? So the next one is the 27th of October, and then November 10th, and then November 24th.
The 10th doesn't work, but the 24th does, and I think that gives them plenty of time. And if
Yeah.
we don't have enough answers by
It's
then,
Thanksgiving, the previous Thursday, or 28th afterwards?
it's after that, it's the 27th.
Okay.
It's on a Thursday this
I'm
year.
not concerned about my stomach.
Will you be preparing a meal for us, Mr. Chairman, for that meeting, or?
Well, if I'm not writing any notes down, I'm certainly not going to make a meal, I'll tell you that. Okay, so November 24th, Mr. Gary, is that?
Okay.
All right, so could I have a motion for a continuance to Monday, November 24th, 2014?
Through Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for ZB 2014-036 for a special permit for 1600 Middlesex Street to be continued to November 24th.
Have a second?
Second the motion.
A roll call?
Mr. Bailey,
Continued to November 24th.
Mr. Callahan,
Continue to November 24th.
Mr. McCarthy,
Continue to November 24th.
Mr. Palia,
Continue to November 24th.
Mr. Peck.
Continue to November 24th.
Okay, Mr. Gary, we'll see you on November 24th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
members of the board, and Mr. Janowitz, for your patience.
Yep, thank you. Okay, our next matter before us is, still under continuances. This is for a special permit. The applicant is Bell Atlantic Mobile of Mass Co-op, property located 175 Old Canal Drive. Petition to construct a new 100-foot telecommunications monopole with an 11.5 by 26-foot equipment shelter and other associated equipment pursuant to section 7.6 and 11.3 of the zoning ordinance. The applicant has sent us communication requesting a continuance. I'm going to read it into the record. I'd like to request a continuance for our next scheduled ZBA meeting on 10/16, October 16th. Verizon has been implementing some new technology in its network, and they may be considering a redesign of the site. As you can imagine, these sites are all part of a network, and none stand alone. So changes in one place tend to affect others. Do you need me? Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so Joe, and they want to continue this November 10th. What does this mean to the planning board, since they already?
Nothing really. They've already
Okay.
approved the petition, so.
Okay. All right, so could I have a motion for continuance to November 10th, please?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for ZB 2014-046 for a special permit for Bell Atlantic Mobile Corporation at 175 Old Canal Drive to be continued to November 10th.
Have a second?
Second motion.
We have a roll call?
Mr. Bailey?
Continued.
Mr. Callahan?
Continue to November 10th.
Mr. McCarthy?
Continue to November 10th.
Mr. Palia?
Continue to November 10th.
Mr. Peck?
Continue to November 10th.
Okay. Okay, we're going to move to new business. First petition is ZB 2014-47. Petitions of variance. The applicant is UMass Lowell, property located 833 Broadway Street. Petition to relocate an oversized curb opening to service a new loading dock pursuant to section 6.11 of the zoning ordinance. And I guess I'll just ask a quick question. I know you've been before us, and I had asked this of Joe. On the application, it says 71 Wilder Street,
Yes,
and this says 833 Broadway. Can you just let
I
me know
can
what that
explain
means?
that. We submitted the application with what we thought what the address was, 71 Wilder Street. The assessor's office changed it because it's a larger parcel associated with South Campus to 883 Broadway.
Okay. So it's 833 we're going to go with. Okay. All right, now that I get that out of my mind, what can you tell us?
So I'm Jean Robinson from the university. With me tonight, we have Shaheen from Green International and Daryl Philippi from Bergmeyer Associates. I think everyone's aware that a few months ago we opened the University Crossing, and many of the occupants that are now in University Crossing actually previously were in McGovern Hall. It was previously, that was our student center, our student union, and now that's located in the new building. That gives us a great opportunity to create a new state-of-the-art dining facility on our south campus, which is what this project is all about. And I'd like to ask permission of the board to show a very brief overview of the project, followed by just addressing the comments that the city engineer had. I know she had a few concerns that I'd like to address point by point following the presentation. Thanks.
You're welcome.
My name is Shaheen. I work for Green International. Our office is located at 239 Littleton Road in Westford, Mass. Zip code 01886. I'm working as a sub-consultant to Bergmeyer, the architect. Both of us are working for UMass Lowell on this McGaffin project. I'm going to just give you a quick overview of the project. Okay, I don't know what happened to the thing, but okay, there you go. Okay, so our scope of the project goals. The UMass Lowell would like to renovate McGaffin Student Center. They want to reposition the McGaffin as a main dining facility for serving South Campus. The project also includes demolition of an existing South dining hall, which is located behind McGaffin building. And then we're going to do some landscaping and the new grass area in the Central Mall. The site location. The site is located on a parcel of land owned by UMass Lowell and referenced as the South Campus. The site is abutted by southerly by Broadway Street, easterly by Wilder Street, and westerly by Solomon Way. McGaffin Hall is also located on Wilder Street with address 71 Wilder Street, between the Health and Social Sciences Building and O'Leary Library. The site is located in an institutional mixed-use district. This is a quick locus map of the location I just described where the site is. It's very close to the Merrimack River. It is on Wild Street, and as you see, it is like just north of Broadway, the intersection of Broadway and Wilder Street. The project description. We need to the repurposing of McGaffin Hall into a dining hall would require a complete upgrade of the utilities serving the building. The majority of food service program is organized along Wilder Street side, the building, in order to develop efficient proximities to the active loading functions. A new loading dock would be required on Wilder Street side to allow for deliveries by 2 trucks along the space for trash collection. As part of that, we're going to have also new sidewalks and new driveways and new landscaping. Site improvements. We're going to have new sidewalks, as shown on the plans. We're going to have a new driveway curb cut on Wilder Street. We're going to eliminate an existing curb cut on Wilder Street, which is approximately about 54 feet wide. We're going to relocate that to allow for the new geometry for the loading dock. The proposed curb cut width will be 50 feet, so it will be less than the existing. The zoning requirements for this area is 32 feet, so we're going to be over like 18 feet in width. As part of this project, also we're going to have milling and overlay of Wilder Street within our work, because we're going to have some utility connections for the new, as part of the renovation of the building. And then also we're going to have new landscaping and new grass areas. The driveway curb cut, that's what the application is all about. These are some photos for the existing curb cut that we have right now. As you see in the photos, I have like a couple of photos this is like looking at the curb cut standing on the east side of Wilder Street. This is the photo on the left side. On the right side, this is looking at the entire westerly side of Wilder Street sidewalk in front of McGaffin. So the purpose of this variance is we need to relocate that existing curb cut to allow for the new site improvements. Because of the new loading dock location, the geometry of the site, and the restrictions that we have, we thought that it would be better to relocate the curb cut such that the geometry will allow for a truck to back into the loading dock. And as I said, the proposed curb cut will be 50 feet, 4 feet less than the existing one. And then as part of this project, we're going to have new sidewalks. We're going to have all the sidewalks will meet the ADA, MAAB, and the City of Lowell standards. And as I said, as part of this renovation, also we're going to have milling and overlay on Wilder Street within the limits of work. This is the plan that we attached to the permit. It shows all the dimensions that I just described. The curb cut will be located about 300 feet away from the intersection of Wilder Street and Broadway. And the proposed curb cut is 50 feet compared to the 54 existing curb cut. And with that, I think I'll just turn it back to Jane.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, we did receive a copy of the comments from the city engineer's office today. I'd like to comment on a few of those, if I could. So the first comment that the city engineer had brought up was the request for the full-length paving of Wilder Street. A few years ago, we did do a complete upgrade of our water main loop for South Campus for fire protection, and that project was actually funded by the state. As such, we did not have the luxury of adding the scope of repaving, and I'm not sure if there was a moratorium in place at that point from the city's perspective for paving the full width and the full length of the street or not. I know after that project was complete, the engineer came back and made this request of us, and at that point, we did not have the opportunity to go back to the state to request the additional funds to expand the scope of the project. So with this project, we would certainly welcome the opportunity to pave full width down to Lund Street, which is slightly beyond the scope of this work. The second comment from the city engineer was with the bus stop sidewalk. When we installed the bus stop there on Wilder Street, it was intended originally as a temporary location. It worked out very well for the university. It pulled traffic off from Broadway, so from that perspective, it worked out well for the city as well. The intent at that point was to convert that asphalt sidewalk into a concrete sidewalk. We had an architect look at the landscape there, and there are some very challenging grade changes in that area. We could not touch that at that point without addressing all of the landscape around McGovern flowing into the south courtyard. That is actually part of our future project. After McGovern is done and South Dining is demolitioned, the next phase of our transformation for South Campus is to create a green mall on that side of Broadway. And as part of that project, we are engaging a designer to look at that whole, the landscaping of that entire quadrant of the campus. So I would respectfully request the opportunity to address this concern as part of that landscaping project, rather than create accessibility challenges that would come with just addressing this one portion of the landscape that the engineer is asking us to do right now. The third comment was the request for additional documentations for the Broadway-Wilder intersection. We completed that work in conjunction with the city. You folks are aware of that. We still owe the city some of the documentation. We've been working with the contractor and the engineer of record to get the documentation, and we certainly recognize and have every intention of following up with the engineer to provide the documentation that we need to for that project. We've already addressed the concern on the address for the project. Traffic impact was the next comment. We share the concern that Wilder Street is a very congested area. In fact, that is one of the primary drivers for us taking the initiative to redo the intersection on Pawtucket Broadway down at the far end of our south quadrant. The intent of redoing that intersection at Broadway Pawtucket is to pull our campus traffic off from Wilder and encourage people to go down Pawtucket and back up Broadway so they can park in the commuter lot and in the new parking lot over there, and therefore keeping as much vehicle traffic from the campus off from that Wilder Broadway sector as possible. So the intent is to encourage people to park on the perimeter of the campus and then to walk through the campus. The next comment that the engineer had made was the trucks on the sidewalk, and again, share the concern. There's already policies, both from the city and from the campus, in place. So I believe this is primarily an enforcement issue as far as encouraging the trucks not to park in the sidewalk. We already do that. We ticket on a regular basis. Hours of delivery were the next comment. And we have spoken with our food service provider, Aramark, to get a better understanding of what their current delivery schedule appears to be. Right now, they are anticipating 4 to 6 trucks per day. The majority of those trucks already arrive prior to 9 o'clock in the morning. In fact, they said about 60% of the trucks arrive prior to, did I say 6 o'clock? Prior to 9 o'clock in the morning. That means, at the most, we would expect maybe 2 trucks to arrive after 9 o'clock. Because it is food service, the majority of deliveries happen in the morning before 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So worst case scenario, we may see 2 trucks between 9 o'clock and 1 o'clock. It's in everyone's best interest, it's certainly in our best interest to get those deliveries into the building, delivered, and the trucks gone before the students arrive on campus. So I do share the concern and the observation that the engineer made. I just would respect or request the opportunity to self-police us on this matter and encourage the deliveries to arrive as early as possible and minimize the number of deliveries that are happening after 9 o'clock in the morning. It would be very difficult for the campus to guarantee that the deliveries would not happen during class schedule simply because our class schedules are so extensive and so varied. We have some classes that start at 7:30 in the morning. They go until 10 o'clock at night. So that really would cut down significantly when we were able to receive deliveries for the food service that we're hoping to offer here at at McGovern. And the final list of comments provided by the engineer are all city standards. As you know, we have a very good working relationship with the city, and all of these standards are part of our standard operating procedure as well.
What was the very first one you mentioned that you were going to take the recommendation? Which one was that? The first one you mentioned?
The first one was...
It wasn't anything with the sidewalks, was it?
I believe it was the number 2, the second bullet, which was the as-built from the previous project, which was the Broadway-Wilder intersection that we redid. And so we basically paid for, with the aid of the city, with the aid of the state, we managed the renovation of that intersection and then handed it over to the city. And with that one, we finished that project last November. We still do owe the city some of the as-built. I'm saying as-built. The engineer has requested some documentation that has not yet been given to her, and we have that on our list to follow up with.
Oh, so on that, well, under the general section, the first bullet, but I guess the second sub-bullet, it says the asphalt sidewalk around the bus stop must be replaced with concrete.
Yes, yes. So
with
the asphalt sidewalk, the asphalt sidewalk, we have every intention of converting that into a concrete sidewalk. We're respectfully requesting the opportunity to incorporate that into the future project of the South Campus landscaping plan.
Okay. Okay, anything else?
That's it.
No?
Any questions for us?
We'll soon find out, right? Okay, if you don't have anything, we'll open it up to the public. Does anyone here like to speak in favor of this petition? In favor? In favor? Hearing none. That portion of public hearing is closed. Anyone here like to speak in opposition? 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 Hearing none. That portion of public hearing is closed. Going to open it up to the board. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, to do a 180 from the previous petition, I don't have much to say. A couple of the comments or a couple of the concerns that the engineer's office made, you just answered. My 2 concerns or 3 concerns were, in the middle, the issue of the traffic impact, the issue of the trucks possibly, spilling over onto the sidewalk, and then the delivery hours. But you've answered those, so I'm not going to go through them again, and so I have no further, I have no questions or any other comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. share the same sentiments as
Thank you.
Mike does. My main concern was the traffic, and especially the proposed new driveway coming out basically right at the point of the opposite side of the parking lot, which would cause some major concerns, but you seemed to sway my concerns very well, and I have no further questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I did have.
Oh, no, you only get one shot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I just wanted to make sure, if I may, that the dining hall will remain open to the public, should they wish to
Yes,
dine
I was going to add that. The
Okay.
dining hall will be open to the public. It's actually, the building is 3 stories. The first story is, and Daryl, you'll have to help me with this. The first story is all you can eat, and that will be open with the retail component. Go ahead.
Yes. Good evening. I'm Daryl
to
Filippi
talk
from
for you.
Bergmeyer. So the program is, the main level is all you can eat. Basically, it's residential dining. So that mostly students who have cards can, have various opportunities for various stations. Faculty, students, public can go there and actually pay to eat there as well. On the second floor, we have 2 retail components, a Subway and a Freshie Market. So you can use money and buy food there as well too. So it's definitely a student, faculty, administration, and a public facility.
The second floor is all retail.
Correct.
Yes.
No further questions, Mr. Chairman.
So do you ask that as a student, a faculty member, or a member of the public?
It's for someone who's hungry for Thanksgiving.
2 of the 3, not the faculty, but.
You're too old to be a student, so I'll go with the other 2, yeah. All right, Dennis.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I just want to say you couldn't have provided more welcomed contrast from our previous person here in front of us. So this is such a great project, and I'm really glad that you're making this happen. I have a couple of questions. Are there dumpsters located at the site?
There are dumpsters located on Wilder Street, and what we are actually doing, they're not on Wilder Street, I'm sorry, they're off Wilder Street, but we're fencing them in or screening them so that they will be less obtrusive than they are right now. You can.
As you see in the driveway, the dark shaded gray area is the drive. The leg that turns towards the building, there's position there for 2 dumpsters and a compactor. There is a screen on the left side of the angle that will protect the view, block the view from the public of the loading dock and the activities of the loading dock.
They won't be gated, though, so you
It's
would
not
still
gated, no.
see that directly from the Wilder Street side, correct?
If you're looking,
Straight on from Wilder
mostly right straight across
You would
from
still
Wilder
see
Street,
that.
but if you're, for the
Okay.
main traffic flow and the bus stop position is screened
shade from that side.
by 11-foot screen wall.
And
This is as good as it gets.
That's one of our biggest concerns right now with Wilder Street is that's our front door
Right.
to South Campus, and we greet people with dumpsters.
I-
Which is not the image that we want. So with this new design, I think we've done a nice job, or Bergmeyer has done a nice job of hiding those away and providing a screen. So it's not the first thing or the only thing you're going to see.
And we're also going to still have a strong grade change there, as you currently have. So your Wilder Street entrance is going to be 3 or 4 feet above the actual elevation that you have at the building itself.
Yeah, that is correct. Just the natural grading that's existing there because of the floor plate location in relation
Right.
to the street grade.
Right. Is there any need for any warning system on your other site? I think it's at the crossing that you have a audible and visual warning system, I think, when trucks are actually using that entry. Is there any ideas of incorporating a warning system on the sidewalk?
There isn't currently right now. The screen that we're designing has a slight perforation to it, so you can see through it as well to assist that kind of situation if a student is nearby.
No, the warning system is if trucks are moving forward or backing down, if for pedestrians on the sidewalk to understand that there's a truck ready to enter the street, maybe?
Yes,
Is there-
currently, we haven't incorporated a warning system, no.
I'm just thinking, you're kind of overlapping that pedestrian time with a few of the truck trips. And I'm not sure what the compactor and dumpster trips timing is either, but you might need something there.
Yeah, we could certainly take a look at it. I know we installed that at University Crossing
Right.
to assist with the pedestrian management there, and certainly with this site here, there is a high level of pedestrian traffic as well coming from the bus stops. The majority of the students get off the buses and go right into the courtyard, but there is a fair number of them that will walk up the sidewalk as well.
And then the size of the trucks that you're going to be using here, are they the full tractor-trailer, 53-foot?
The majority of the trucks are smaller trucks. The semi-trailers that do show up are actually the reduced size. So a typical trailer is 52 feet long. These trucks are, by direction of the food vendor Aramark, is requiring them to deliver 41-foot trucks only. So they're actually shorter, and they fit into the whole loading dock area, so they don't overlap the sidewalk.
And there's only two that have those larger trucks,
That's correct.
right? There's only two of the deliveries, the weekly deliveries, that have that larger truck. The primary food service provider and Pepsi has the larger trucks, but the produce, the linens, and the other providers all have the smaller box trucks.
That's great, that's great. The larger trucks, you said, are only coming twice a week? So you get 6 trips a day, so that's 35 trips a
So
week?
two-
And only 2 of them are the large trucks?
Two of the larger trucks, one of the larger trucks comes 2 or 3 times a week, the other one comes once a week,
That's
and all
great.
the other deliveries are the box
That's great.
trucks.
And you're doing all this angled, and I mean, this is fabulous. I mean, the accommodations that's great, okay. Nice job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dennis. Ben?
I agree with my colleagues. This is a great petition, great details. You know, I have no issues, or I see nothing wrong with this petition. So wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Okay. So the reason why you're here is for variance for the curb cut proposals 50.1, and which will be narrower than the existing 54.7. And I believe with the overview you presented and also the documentation you supplied, you've met the conditions for approval of a variance, and I don't believe I heard anything about conditions, but I'll check any conditions with any of the members. So hearing none, you know, as usual, when you've come before us, you've come prepared and with a good overview and details, so I know the board greatly appreciates it. Makes it easier for us and also for you to explain what you're doing. So we appreciate that, and so could I have a motion, please?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for ZB 2014-047 for variance for UMass Lowell for 833 Broadway Street.
Could I have a second?
Second?
A roll call?
Mr. Bailey?
Approved.
Mr. Callahan?
Approved.
Mr. McCarthy?
Approve?
Mr. Palia?
Approved.
Mr. Peck?
Approve.
Okay, been approved, and wish you the best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, thank you. You're welcome. Okay, our next matter before us is ZB 2014-52. The petition's a variance. The applicant is Anna Costa. The property is located at 20 Hudson Street. And the petition to expand an existing parking lot without having setback requirements in accordance with section 6.11 of the zoning ordinance. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Good, how you doing?
If you
My
could
name
tell
is
us-
Helio De Silva. I'm Anna Costa's son-in-law, and I'm the building manager.
Okay, sure. So what can you tell us about the petition, sir?
Well, we're filing for petition for a variance to expand the driveway. Anna Costa owns 2 buildings on Hudson Street. It's a very narrow street, and she needed extra parking for the tenants to keep them off the street. So the driveway was expanded. We're looking for a variance to forego the requirements, the setback requirements, and to leave it as is.
So my understanding is, it looks like the work was done prior to, I guess, the city taking a look at this. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is that, can you tell me why that happened?
I cannot. My father-in-law did the work. He had somebody do the work for him. I don't know who it was. He passed away this beginning of this year.
Yeah.
So I do not know who did the job or what the circumstances were. Just once we got the notice in the mail for the forget what they call it.
So you're notified by somebody?
Yeah, we got notified by the city.
By the city.
Because of the permits.
Yep.
So my sister-in-law took out the required permits.
Yep.
And then I got involved to try to keep it as is because of the parking situation.
Okay. So, Joe, is the onus on the property owner when they're having work like this? How does somebody know they need to contact the city, or is it up to the company that they're hiring to notify the city?
Usually a property owner would leave it up to the company to go ahead and actively get all the permits that they need. Usually that's provided in the scope of services when a property owner enters into an agreement with a particular company. The city's had paving permits required for a few years now, so it's something that's pretty well known now. But we still do have it from time to time where paving is done without a permit being applied for at the engineer's office.
And I thought that's how it works, so whoever was hired should have come down to City Hall and pulled the permit. So I don't know who did your work.
No.
The issue we have before us now is the work's been already done, and now we have to almost assess what's happened. Now, did you receive comments that came from the city in regards to the paving that's already been performed?
What we received was requirements to take out a permit,
Okay,
which was done.
yep,
And we were informed that because of the new laws, setback laws, that it didn't meet the requirements. But if we were to ask for a variance, that they would look at it and perhaps forego the requirements and leave the property as is.
okay. So, do you know, sir, did you receive Joe, do you know if this gentleman received anything from Lisa DeMayo
Yeah,
dated October 14th?
the comments were sent in the mail to the property owner, so they should have been received. We never got bounced back to the city. They were sent approximately a week ago.
Okay, so, but the one from Lisa that's dated October 14th?
Right, the ones that we received today, I don't know if they've received at this time.
Well, if this is dated the 14th, I don't know how you would have got it. It was
Yeah,
mailed.
it's unlikely, yeah.
So we received some comments from the Lisa DeMayo, who's the city engineer, And obviously, you never received them because these were dated like 2 days ago.
No, sir.
Yeah. So, well, so,
Generally, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I think the comments were fairly similar in that they were generally concerning stormwater. The recommendation from Development Services was that the applicant would work with the city engineering department to address any stormwater concerns that they have. It's generally right in their wheelhouse to address stormwater issues. And that seems to be the crux of what the engineering department's concerns are.
all right. Do you understand what the city's referring to about stormwater runoff and what the concern is with the city based on the paving that was performed?
The water runnage?
The water, well, it's the, stormwater, so they're looking for mitigation. Do you understand what the stormwater runoff and the problems it's going to cause because of the paving that was done?
I am kind of aware of it. I did have a meeting down at the property with, I don't know if I wrote his name down. I did write his name down, I just don't, oh, hold on. Excuse me.
Take it time.
I met with Joe Cady, engineering department. He went down and he did explain to me why it should be the way it is. He did look at it and he did seem to think that the runnage did work in the way that it was performed. There is I think they call it a burr, to keep the water from standing or running into the next yard, but to direct it to the street and down into the drainage. He is the one that asked me to, or suggested that if I wanted to continue the matter and file for a variance, that I should speak with Joe Janowitz and find out the procedure to continue with the matter. So that's what I did.
So Joe, do you know about the conversation?
A bit about it. I know it was Mr. Cady that had initially come upon the property and had seen that the paving was done and that no permit was on file for that property. At that point, he did refer them to our office to see if this particular property would be able to seek a variance, which of course they were. So at that point, it's come before this board. We didn't really talk much about any mitigation efforts at that point. So that's why there was the recommendation to continue to work with the engineering department to address any stormwater issues that they may have.
Okay, so there are stormwater issues.
Generally, as noted in the city engineer's comments, typically the reason for the setback today is so that you don't have water running onto adjacent properties, nor we want water to be running into the street, which is why the engineer had a few suggestions in there. There seems to be a few options that could help the situation and allow for some form of the expanded paving.
So do you understand, sir, the options that they're talking about? In other words, they're not satisfied with what was performed because of the runoff.
Okay, no, I do not.
Yeah. See, I don't think he,
Yeah, I
and I
think
don't know if the letter of the 14th would have assisted him with that. And so now I'm going to ask him to read this, and I don't think it's really, well, I don't think it's fair to, he can certainly read it, but now we're going to ask him to comprehend what's being read. That's why I was asking, how could he have received this? All right. How was the size of the pavement decided upon? How was that determined? Since I don't have any idea what was there prior to. Was there pavement where the new pavement was put on, or?
From what I understand, there was chunks of pavement
Yeah.
in there. There is a, I think everybody has a copy of this.
Mhm.
What's circled in yellow is the addition to the existing driveway. It's in front of a garden. that area that's circled in yellow, there was spots of pavement. I'm not sure if it was hot top or cement. And I don't even know if it was torn off or just slabbed over it. But that seems to be the main concern, is that area there that was repaved. Like I said, it was mainly done because of the tenant situation. There isn't enough parking. I was under the assumption that the runnage was adequate, but I am willing to work with the city and to get the matter squared, settled,
Okay.
address any issues.
So the, where it's designated the new parking, well, it says new parking lines. So when the tenants pull in, are they parking, which way are they parking when they pull in there, just so I know?
Toward the garden, they
Okay,
head
so
in straight.
It'd be like, and how many parking spots is that for?
That created 2 extra parking straight forward, and when myself goes down to do what I need to do, I usually park behind it, behind the 2 cars.
So what's the total number of spots do you have parking now for existing paving and the new paving?
There is 6 spots.
Okay, 6. So is this a 2 or a 3 family?
That is a 2-family.
And where are the 2 families? Is somebody in, based on your handout, is somebody in, I'll call it the main building in front, the existing dwelling?
It's a 2-family, first and second floor, if that's the question you're asking. There are people living downstairs and upstairs, and then directly across the street is a 4-family building.
Huh? Okay, I just missed something. So it, huh? Okay, so number 20 is only a 2-family?
Yes.
So what's the setup in back? Is there 1 family in the back, and there's 1 family in the front? Because when I pulled up, I was trying to understand what the layout was.
Okay, the building is, it's a 2-family. It does have like extra rooms in the back, but that's strictly storage,
Okay.
doors, furniture. It's non-occupied.
Non-occupied? Okay.
No. I believe the building is only a 2-family resident building.
Okay, and then on the application, so it says parking at 19, 20, and 21.
Correct.
This is only number 20?
Yes.
Okay. So 19 and 21 are across the street?
Correct.
And that's what, a single family?
That's a 4-family.
A 4-family. So Joe, how do you have a 4-family, a 2-family, and then 6 parking?
The 4-family will be a pre-existing non-conforming use, because a 4-family isn't allowed in a 2-family district nowadays. For somebody to provide parking to a 4-family, they would usually have to have some sort of lease agreement worked out if there were 2 different property owners. Or if a property owner would like to utilize some parking on one site for another, they would have to have adequate parking for the existing use on site, and then have any potential extra parking spaces available. So 4 parking spaces is a requirement for 20 Hudson Street. If the property has 6 spaces, then they could essentially lease 2 parking spaces out to another property. In this case, it's 19 through 21.
Okay. And the reason why I asked about the parking, I was kind of surprised how much surface area was there for parking. So that's why I wanted to ask how you were proposing the cars were gonna be parked. I know when I went by a couple of times, I could see there was maybe only 2 or 3 cars at that time, and they were basically, I'll say, in the existing area. There was nothing on the new area.
Yes.
So I was just trying to visualize how the cars were gonna be parked in there, because it seemed like an awful lot of parking, which is good, because obviously that street, I was amazed when I went down the street.
It's very
It must
tight,
be a
yes.
fun street in the wintertime. Okay. All right, so basically what you're saying, sir, is you're willing to work with the city as far as
Absolutely.
taking care of the concerns that they have. And I'll make sure, if this was put in the mail to you, obviously, it's gonna go to 20 Hudson Street, but do you have like an extra copy anyways, Joe?
I could go get
Yeah,
one.
well, yeah, well, no, if, what Joe said to me, and I believe that the gentleman was listening to, these comments, like I say, that we just got dated the 14th,
Yes.
are pretty much in the same format of what you've already had a discussion with the city about, so I don't think there's any, right, Joe, there's nothing here that's anything different that this gentleman might understand, or does he really need to read this if he's saying he's gonna work with the city?
It might not hurt for him to have the comments, just as a reference. We're certainly willing to work with the engineering department to go over what their concerns are and to try to find some solution as to what efforts could be made in order to reduce the stormwater impact.
So Mike, if you have a copy, what I'd like to do is, let's recess for like 5 minutes. I'd like you to he'll give you a copy of this, just so you can take a look at it, and then we'll just restart again, and we'll move on. Okay, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yep, thank you. All right, so we're gonna recess for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, 14. Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay, we're all set to continue. So I gave you an opportunity to read through it. Do you have any questions, first of all? Or?
Actually, I do.
Sure, go ahead.
I have a few comments.
Yep.
Particularly on three different paragraphs here.
Yep.
Which basically the reason why I applied for the variance in the first place.
Yep.
The one with the burr on the side, it's asking to remove it and set it back an extra 3 feet. If we set it back 3 feet, we will be taken away from the parking. And one of the main reasons why I asked for a variance was to leave it intact. The other one, the edging on the side of the driveway toward the sidewalk, it's saying here that they want us to remove that back 3 feet. Same situation there. If we move it back 3 feet, I think in the long run, it's going to create a bigger problem, because to put back what was there is basically just dirt, rocks, stuff, debris like that. It's more of a safety hazard, if you ask me.
Okay.
And the third would be the fence that is no longer there. That fence, from what I understand, was originally removed to create ease of access to the driveway. If there is a fence there, it will create more problems than it would help, because of the fact that you can't park in the same direction. You would have to park in a downward direction toward the neighbor's yard, facing the neighbor's yard. Trying to pull out of a situation like that would be very hard, especially if you have the car on the inside, trying to back out around the outside car and the other two cars that could be parked in the driveway at that particular time. I ask at this time to the board if I could continue with the variance to alleviate these 3 areas. Those 3 areas of concern, not that I'm not willing to work with the board, but those 3 areas of concern, in my view, are going to create a bigger problem.
Okay, so what we can do is, we're going to continue with the meeting anyways, and then
Okay.
I'm sure we'll come back to this.
Okay.
But I appreciate your comments back.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else you want to add?
Not at this time.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, going to open it up to the public. Anyone here like to speak in favor of this petition? In favor? In favor? Yes, sir. Sure.
Hoeveel woorden heb je even Amerika?
It's okay. You can move that mic down. You can pull it down, yeah.
This is our neighbor, Reginaldo Betancourt.
Yep.
And he says he has no problem. He was one of the people, the abutters, and he's here in favor of it. He's known my parents for...
And which side of the property is he?
He lives across the street,
Across the
next
street.
door to the 19 and 21.
Okay,
19,
yep,
He
Okay.
lives right next door, so that's why he's here.
okay. So he's basically here he has no opposition to putting it in? Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Anyone else like to speak in favor? In favor? In favor? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Emma Pacheco. You know, the one I have the house at 30 Hudson Street, and the land for the 26 Hudson Street.
Yep.
That's the one, Manny goes to have the 20. I got the 26.
Okay.
So the guys, so many years ago, in demolition the house, I just have, the land. That's why I pay for 20 years, I pay, the taxes to the city hall. So when many goes to buy the two families house at 20 Hudson Street, everything, the land is open.
Yep.
You have a lot of, grass, things growing, and still open. When I buy, the land, and the 26 and the 30 Hudson, and the guy said, you have two tax bill, one for the 26, one for the 30, it's the house, So I keep going like this, keep pay taxes. Every day I'm confused. I say, well, everything is open. I see so many houses, demolition, and the next neighbor use the land. Nobody have a house over there. I say, I wish I don't pay taxes, and somebody use my space for the 26. Mm-hmm. That's why I try to fight with this, and I talk to the, to the engineer. The engineer go over there and check, because I complain about the many customers don't ask permission to me. Say, Emma, can I make a driveway close to your garden? You don't say nothing. I just, an problem, So when I look in window, I say, yeah, maybe many gonna sell the house. I go for the back door to my house and just look straight. I see the guy, the one, is already everything's done for both, fix the driveway. So I look, and the guy said, Manny, you ask permission for the neighbors? He said, no. So I keep walking, me and my husband, and the guys go, so what's the matter, Manny? I'm thinking you sell the house. He said, no, I make a driveway. I said, you don't ask me permission, because you have, put the fence in the middle before, mm-hmm. Because everything is open. You make a garden, and decide to have the garden, you make a driveway, And the guy, the ones fix the driveway, he said, hey man, you're supposed to go for the city hall for have a permission. If I do this job, you better go. That's why when I come over here, and the guy check and say, many don't come over here for have a permission to make the driveway. And the engineer go over there, and the second day, the January, the engineer called me, he said, I'm okay, I check. I said, yeah, you make the driveway, you see, and the sidewalk is still the same way, and the car, so many cars, I don't know, two families, I have so many cars, so many trucks, and lots of ladders, because the house, fix houses and paint, so many ladders on the top, so many trucks, and the truck can go straight, you go around like this, and point to the lights straight to my house, and say, I don't want to stay in my house in Apollo, and the guys see what I have inside my house. Me and my husband complain sometimes, coming outside, say, I don't want to see the lights for the cars point to my house, for see everything in my house. I say, how many people live over here? How many trucks over here? I wish that, I tell before many die, I say, many, okay, you fix the driveway. If this land is mine, you spend the money, it's already done for me. Oh, how much you pay for the taxes? I say, it's not your business. You never tell me how much you pay the taxes from your house. Mm-hmm. Why you ask me how much I pay the tax? I know I pay 2 tax bills, That's why I try to, if coming 2 times to the city hall and complain about the same thing. Because I said I help both don't pay for the same thing. I know I have the proof over there. I pay the taxes. I have 2 different bills. So I need to find out the right thing. If some is mine, I want my stuff, that's why I pay. That's the way I come over here, For to stay my mind, stay in peace, don't think about every day, say, oh, this is mine, or this is for the other one. I want everything straight because I pay. Because I have letters with me. A lot of people, the ones sell houses and buy houses, they make letters for me and say, you want to sell your house at 26 Hudson Street? I said, the guy said, 26 Hudson. I called back to the guy. I said, okay, I want to tell you something. The house don't exist no more. It exists, use the land. Oh, I think you have the house. If you like to buy the land, just come on, you measure, I don't pay you. Because I'm doing smart. I say, if something happen, the guy going to measure again, because I pay before for the guy measure. They say, you're going to measure again the land. If you like to buy the land, you buy the land, because the house no exists no more. So I still save the letter. Someday if the guys decide to come on, You're gonna measure him again. If something happens, I say, well, I complained before. Because every time, when the guys park the cars over there, my husband complains, this is my park, this is my driveway. I say, to shut up. Until I find out everything straight. Because before I'm the one, thinking about to buy the house at 20. Me and my husband, so I said, it's another bill. So I stopped. So when many buy, because you have the other one, the 4 families, it's across the street, it's good for him, So when everything's open, if, for example, you have a house, you demolish the house, and the neighbor go and jump, because he did it before for me for the Bassett Street, the 28 Bassett. You see the land is empty, you have nothing, everybody's trying to park over there, say, don't park over there, this is my land, I buy this, this house in demolition. That's the way I'm thinking. The same is the 20 Hudson, the land is, nothing is just grass and stuff, and somebody jump.
Okay,
Yeah, because I have the problem before in a Bassett Street.
okay, ma'am.
So I need to find out if everything's okay or not, because I don't want to think about day and night, and, that's why the guy's coming over here,
Okay, all right. I appreciate you coming down.
So I don't know if the guys give me a report, an email, or something else, if I don't fight no more, when the guys park over there, or something else, Because so many trucks, the big trucks and the big ladders, and have the post, look like the telephone post, I sometimes look like the guy, you're gonna smash it. He smash, he comes straight to my house, so I'm scared. My husband jumping per naked like this. I say, watch out, if you go to the post, you're gonna smash my house. You're not supposed to park over here. That's the problem my husband had before, that's why he talked too much, because he's afraid.
Okay, ma'am.
So,
Thank you. Appreciate
okay,
it.
so I need, after the results for,
Yep. Okay.
okay?
Yep, thank you very
Thank you.
much. Yep, thank you. Anyone else like to speak in opposition? 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 Hearing none, that portion of public hearing is closed. I'd like to open it up to the board. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is it appropriate for me to just ask the woman who just spoke, or to try to clarify a couple of things that she said, or?
Sure. If she wants to come up.
Okay.
Ma'am, do you want to come back up? He has a couple of questions for you.
Well, I just want to try to clarify some of the comments that you made. So if I'm looking at 20 Hudson, you're the house to the right with the garden and all the plantings, and you're living in the property where the driveway, next to where the driveway was built.
Yeah, I got the 20 Hudson, and the straight line, is supposed to be a 26, that's the 26, it's a land, and the next, that's a 30.
So you're saying you still own 26?
Yeah, I pay the taxes for both, for 30 Hudson and 26 Hudson.
So that's something that I think you'd have to, that's not something that this board would be discussing. It would maybe be something that the assessor's office needs to look at, or that she would have to bring to the assessor's office?
Yeah, I guess depending upon what the question is, if someone were to look to try to merge the properties such that you only had one tax bill, that would require an A&R to merge the lots, which is reviewed by the planning board as opposed to this board, if that's the question. In terms of the particular project that's for 20 Hudson, it's not something that should be trickling over onto 26 Hudson. That's why the plot plan was done. So that way any payment that was done is contained to 20 Hudson, not going over and encroaching onto 26.
Yeah.
So I guess, again, just for your benefit, you might want to speak to the city assessor's office about the question about the property lines. That's not something that we would be deciding here. We're just talking about the way the driveway was built and whether it's too close to your property.
Yeah, because I don't care if I pay separate taxes. It's better for me, because I pay, say, 26 and, say, 30 Hudson, I don't care for separate bills, it's better. So I want to find out if somebody owes some land for mine, the one I pay taxes. For example, if I have the 26, I pay taxes, somebody use my land, I'm the one I pay. Or if I pay, the other one pay too, both pay for the same thing, that's why I come over here.
But I mean, that's not something that we would be, I guess, able to help you with, or that's not what we're deciding. We're just talking about the way the driveway was built. If it's been built on your property,
Yeah,
but that's not something that I think we would be considering.
yeah, that's the way I'm thinking. If you put the driveway in the area, I pay the taxes for the 26. That's why I try.
Yeah, if there's any question as to whether or not the driveway was constructed on 26 Hudson Street, the woman here would have to hire a surveyor to survey the property to make sure the property lines are accurate, I guess, according to this plan. If there's a property line dispute, that's a private matter, not something this board or the city would get involved in.
So do you understand that? I mean, we're not considering the issue about the property line. That's something you'd have to continue to work on your own. Like Joe said, you might have to hire a surveyor to figure out whether this has been, whose property this is on. But, so moving on to the driveway, I mean, you are, if I can just clarify, you're speaking against the way the driveway was built, correct? Because it's...
Yeah, that's why I come over here and ask him, no. He checked and said, no, you don't come over here for taking permission. So I said, you know why? Because I'm thinking they're going to make a driveway and my space for the 26 Hudson. That's why I complain, just for this. Because, because I see so many places when the land is empty, the next neighbor use it free. So I said, I don't want to pay for 20 years. I buy the house. I don't want to pay taxes for 20 years. Somebody use my land. That's why I want to try. The guys check, if I got my stuff and many got his side, because I don't want to pay for somebody else. I don't want to fight with the other people who live over there in the 20, because they fight all the time about the guys.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm not sure, Mr. Chairman or Joe, I mean, I'm concerned that the applicant has stated, after having just a brief recess to look at what they'll be getting in the mail, that they don't seem interested in working with the city to make any of the changes or even to consider the changes that were suggested. So I'm not sure where we go from here, but would that be something where we would ask them to consider continuing, Mr. Chairman, so that they can meet with the city and maybe come up with an alternate plan? Because when I went out to the site, I immediately noticed, again, how close the driveway is to the abutting property. And now the property owner is here to speak out against that. And they have a very well-maintained side yard and garden and plantings there that I think in a heavy storm could potentially be damaged by the way that driveway was built. And then a sort of an unrelated concern that I have, but I feel worth mentioning, similar to the gentleman who was here earlier with the used car lot, when I went out to the site and was reading through the petition, and you do mention that the parking is also for 19 and 21. When I turned around and looked at 19 and 21, and I made a list of all the things that I saw that hopefully, again, it's outside of our purview, but I feel worth mentioning. But outside of 19 and 21, there were two abandoned mattresses, two box springs, a rolled-up rug, a sofa, two old chairs, and some pillows, basically piled on the street and the sidewalk outside the property. So again, it's not something that's under our jurisdiction, but I'd like to at least have that taken care of.
I would be more than glad to answer that question.
Sure, go
That
ahead.
stuff was put out last weekend. We had a tenant that moved out and left all that stuff behind. I have made a phone call today. It is being picked up on Monday. We are not we don't own the properties to leave mattresses and box springs and sofas and stuff like that. That was put out for curbside so that the appropriate companies can pick them up.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And can I add a few more things?
Is it in relationship to your neighbor next door?
Yes.
Sure, go ahead.
She stated that she's been there 20 years.
Yeah.
The gentleman that was up here earlier has been there longer than 20 years. There has never been a house in that garden area that she claims to have.
Yep.
And that fence has always been there ever since he's been living there. He was there before she moved in.
Okay.
And the other thing was that, I can't think of it now. It's been surveyed twice, and that is his property. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
We did have it surveyed twice already. First time was many years ago, and the second time was she confronted me after I started taking care of the property. We had it surveyed, and it came back that it was, in fact, on our property. And when she came back and confronted me again, I suggested that she dealt with the city, and we'd take care of it from there. And I never heard from her again, so I assumed it was done.
So when it was surveyed, did the surveyor put markings to the ground?
On the fence, he marked the fence as the property line.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, anything else, Mike?
Again, just a suggestion, I know that the petitioner just received a copy of the engineer's bullet points today. I would suggest, I guess I'll say I'm not in favor of granting the variance without the applicant at least going back to the engineer or the planning office to look over what was asked.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, if I can ask the petitioner a couple more questions, Mr. De Silva, if you can.
Yes, sir.
As existed, I mean, I know you paved and the stuff, the work's already been done and whatnot, but as existed right now, how many cars are usually parked in the lot now that it's been paved?
Now that it's been paved?
Yeah.
6, 7 cars.
Okay. It's just because one of the concerns I'm seeing is trying to get cars in there with the just one opening that's there. And I share the same sentiments of the city with regards to the runoff, and I really think that's something you probably should consider working with them on that. And same thing as Mike had said. I mean, I'm kind of leaning towards the fact, I mean, if you were working with the city, I might consider with the variance, but if you're saying that it just can't be done, I don't know what.
I will be contacting the engineers department on Monday, and I will go through this list with him to see what we can work out.
Okay, all right, thank you. No further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Dennis?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to say that I'm glad to see additional parking being provided in that neighborhood. And I think that having that additional parking for the lot across the street, house across the street, to alleviate the congestion is a great thing. So I think it was meant well, what your father-in-law, I guess, did. But the manner in which he did it is the issue, in that he didn't do it to the standards that we require so that we can have a functioning drainage system in the city and have a protected area for neighbors. And so, but it's great that it's there in providing off-street parking for these properties that don't have off-street parking available. So it's kind of one of those things where it's a great idea, it meant well, but it just needs to be done in a manner that is sympathetic to the rest of the city systems and the neighbors. So I think that what you just said, where you're going to work with the city engineer to come up with a solution to mitigate the drainage, makes all the sense in the world. And I think we should make that a condition if we vote on this tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dennis. Van?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, I totally agree with Mr. McCarthy's statement. It's always a good thing when you can get streets, cars off the streets and into a driveway. And, you know, that's Hudson Street is a very narrow and tight street. So it's, you know, you meant well, but I think that's why we have these like zoning and ordinance and guidelines in place. So if, you know, if you went through the proper process and not did the work already, we wouldn't have this issue we would be talking about. You need to have sufficient drainage, sewage, runoff system. So that's the real issue. I think it's, you know, you should have went through the proper steps to have a kind of a solid plan in place before you started the work on the driveway. So, you know, I am very happy to hear that you are going to sit down and work with the city and work out all the details. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Pam, thank you. Well, I think a couple of things. As I had originally asked, you know, when the work was being done, and I had asked Joe from DPD who needs to pull that, and again, the contractor didn't pull the permit, so now you're left with the damaged goods, let's put it that way. So unfortunately, you know, and I think what the board members are saying to you is, you know, the city came out, they gave their observations here. You seem to have some reservations about it. I don't think we can just say, you know, forget about it. Unfortunately, the permit should have been pulled, it wasn't pulled. Now, you know, you're living with some consequences. I think if I look at these three items that you have issues with and you're looking for relief on, I really don't think they're, especially the berm and the asphalt, the 3-foot set-offs that they keep talking about. I know since I've been on the board, and Joe, I think your department can work with the petitioner as far as, I think you made some comments about, well, if I'm going to remove that, then it's going to be left with, like, you know, it's actually not going to look good or whatever, but I think the purpose is it's the meat zoning, but I believe the city can work with you to remove that area, but also give the appearance that it'll blend in with what you've already put down. I don't think the city's here to say, yeah, get 3 feet out and make it look like an unfinished product.
Right.
Let's, you know, that's not the intent of the city. They do very good work working with petitioners to help them out, let's put it that way. They're here to assist you, it's not to work against you. And the storm runoff is always an issue with many properties. So the fencing, though, the only thing I want to ask about that, Joe, so the fencing along the sidewalk has been removed and must be replaced. Now, so this might be another area where your department would come in. Just give me an idea of, you know, options that we might look at with the fencing.
Yeah, so the concern on that one is that the fenced area, the fencing along Hudson Street, with that removed and now that area paved, it may encourage cars to go ahead and drive over the sidewalk and drive over the curbing, which deteriorates the sidewalk a lot more quickly. And then you have a sidewalk that's not great for pedestrians to use. So that's why the engineer has suggested, you know, putting the fence back in, perhaps removing 3 feet of pavement within the front there to kind of mitigate that, as well as for stormwater purposes. We can certainly explore if either one of those makes sense to do. And in the event that any paving was removed, there could be, you know, something such as landscaping that could be installed, not only to dress it up and to make it look more appropriate, but also to accomplish the goals of stormwater mitigation, and also to you know, have that aesthetic feel and to kind of prevent that bad practice of driving over the sidewalk like that.
And, you know, I don't see that as a negative to your property. I don't see that as a big cost impact to you also. Again, the work was already done, so now you got to come back and fix what was done. I don't believe these changes are going to, first of all, be a huge cost impact to you. Again, there's going to have to be some cost involved because of what happened. You know, we can't go back, you can't go back and change what happened. I understand what you want to do, but I think based on what's been proposed to us, and the board feels pretty strongly about the recommendations for the changes, I think what I strongly recommend is that you embrace these changes and that the city's here to work with you. Again, they'll do what they need to do to work with you. It's not to make you do something and put all kinds of costs in your pocket to do this. But I think there's obviously ways to meet the requirements that the city engineer is definitely taking a look at and would help you with this. Now,
Could
if
I
it's-
ask who the city engineer was?
Yeah, it's Lisa DeMeo,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
'Cause
That's who did the observations at the property site.
Okay. The only reason I ask is because I had Joe Cady out there. He looked at it, and he said it was fine. All I had to do was file for a variance. And that's the only reason why I'm
Who's Joe's
here.
position? I'm sorry, sir, who's Joe's?
Joe Cady is another person in the engineering office, works
Okay.
under Lisa.
Okay, so I'm assuming Lisa knew he already visited the site, or not?
Yes.
Yep.
But If it seems
If it
like the
wasn't for
board
him,
is
I wouldn't even
looking-
known about the variance.
What's that?
Yeah, it seems like the board is looking for, some interaction between the engineering office, development services, and the applicant. And we're more than happy to sit down with both Lisa and Joe, kind of go over what they both feel will make the property work, and to also address some of the concerns of the board as well.
So basically what Joe's saying is you're gonna have two departments assisting you with
Okay.
this to get it done, within the framework of the zoning. So, before we vote on this, I mean, the first condition obviously is going to be that you're willing to work with the city in regards to the October 14th
Absolutely.
minutes. Okay.
October 4th?
The October 14th letter that was, that you didn't have in your possession when you
yes.
first came here. Okay. That's one condition. Any other, I don't think I heard anything. Did anybody else have any other conditions? So if you're willing to abide by the conditions here, again, the city will work with you, the two departments. Hopefully you'll have a finished product that's A, satisfying to zoning, and B, will be a good finished product for your property there. Okay, without anything else, could I have a motion, please?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for ZB 2014-052 for variance, the applicant name Ann Acosta at 20 Hudson Street, with the following condition, that the applicant work with the city engineering department and DPD to incorporate the intent of the letter of October 14th, and to explore the feasibility of implementing the stormwater mitigation measures on site.
Okay, could I have a second?
Second the motion.
Roll call.
Mr. Bailey,
Approved with conditions.
Mr. Callahan,
Approve with conditions.
Mr. McCarthy,
Approve with condition.
Mr. Palia,
Approved with conditions.
Mr. Peck.
Approve with conditions.
Okay, Mr. De Silva, you've been approved with conditions. Wish you the best of luck. You're welcome. Thank you. Okay. Our next matter before us is ZB 2014-53. This is for a special permit and variance. The applicant is Crosspoint Associates, LLC, property located at 900 Chelmsford Street. And the petition, special permit for an illuminated sign pursuant to section 6.3.2.9D of the zoning ordinance, and variances for wall sign and freestanding signs pursuant to section 6.3.28C and 6.3218-D of the zoning ordinance. Excuse me, sir. Sir? I can't have you sitting there talking. We got another, if you can sit and listen, but you can't talk. Thank you.
Hi.
Good evening. How are you?
Good evening.
Yep.
My name is Christy Amendelari. I'm here on behalf of the ownership of Crosspoint. I'm here before you tonight going over our new signage program that we have. being implemented with the new ownership that's taken place June 30th of this year.
Okay.
We are looking to add entry banners to the Chelmsford and industrial entrances to the building, along with adding some parking lot banners to identify the lots that are incorporated within the parking system, and then adding a garage scrim for the Cross Point new rebranding and revitalization of Cross Point, and also to repair the rooftop signage that is currently there by adding, by maintaining the existing Cross Point lettering with exchanging out the neon lighting to LED lighting and changing the faces of the Cross Point letters for it to be new. It hasn't been updated in probably 20 years since it's been, or longer since it's been up there. And then changing out the mark in the middle of the cross in the point to update it with the new branding logo to take away the wing. And that's what we have planned for the first phase, and then we'll have some more coming down the pipeline in the future.
And did you receive copy of the comments that came back from the city dated October 2nd?
I did not.
Okay. So, Joe, do you know if these were?
Was that sent from Judy? Okay.
So I'll give you a few minutes to
Sure.
take a glance at those.
Okay.
Okay, so if we could just run through those, if you
Sure.
want to give us some comments back, please. Yeah. Do you have any comments on any of the, I mean, is there anything you don't agree with the, I guess I'll call it the 4 bullets that are here?
There's currently, the light poles are existing there. We were looking to add some additional lighting coming into the driveways, which is in bullet point number 1. The new wall sign attached to the second floor of the garage is currently up on a temporary status right now, pending your approval, with positive feedback from the current tenants that are in the building and a few folks that we have that had come by from the city to take a look at it. So.
Yeah, so I guess number 2, I think it speaks for itself that there isn't any issues with,
Okay.
and I know I can say when I drove by the first time and saw it, it was very, I don't know. I guess I'm so used to seeing that garage with nothing on it. It was almost like, whoa, where did that come from? Yeah.
And
okay.
then the third point is the top of the building, just kind of addressing the signage up there is, are you asking for restrictions on the
Well,
lighting?
then-
Or are we just kind of going with the same scheduled plan as currently?
Well, bullet number 3 talks about the illuminated signs.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was, the board may want to request a restriction. So what's the hours of illumination? Any idea?
I don't, it's what it has been since prior ownership.
Okay,
So,
that's good.
the only thing that's changing within the illumination of the signs is the neon to LED, just for cost savings, and the mark
He hates LED.
in the middle, to take away from the old brand to replace it with
Yep.
a new brand,
Okay.
which will be in the same footprint of the current mark that's there,
Okay, number 4 looks
besides
like
the
this.
design structure.
Yep. Number 4 looks like there's no issues, just comments, so. No, I just want to make sure there wasn't anything that was commented by the city that, wasn't, I guess, true based on your plans.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think you've been before us before, have you?
No,
for your
my first
company?
time.
Yeah. Yeah. Surprised you're still awake.
I was going to say, sorry if you're here so long, and we still have one more petition too, but.
Okay, anything else you want to add?
No?
No, okay.
Do you have
You
any
know-
questions for me?
Not right yet. We're going to open it up to the public.
Okay.
We're whittling it down fast. Anyone here like to speak in favor of this petition? In favor? Favor? Hearing none. That portion of public hearing is closed. Anyone like to speak in opposition? 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 Hearing none. That portion of public hearing is closed. Mike?
I don't have any questions. I mean, the comments from DPD are just sort of summarizing with the new changes. I do just want to comment on, I'm not a marketing person, but I like the brand, both the sort of the idea of the network on the poles, the banners, and then also the first thing I thought of with the new logo between the words cross and point, it looks like one of those locator things that you see like on Google Maps when it shows that you found the place that you're looking for. Maybe that's what you were looking for when.
That's what we were looking for.
So that's the first thing I thought
We
of.
wanted to put Cross Point on the map.
Right, and so, great, so it worked. Now I'll have to go there and conduct some business for some reason, but.
We have plenty of space.
So that's great. Again, no questions. I just wanted to comment on the new branding, even though I'm sure Dennis will have more astute comments about the branding.
Okay, thank you. Sean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no questions either. The comments from the board were pretty straightforward. I happened to drive by, like, the chairman the other day, too, and the big banner on the side of the garage caught my eye, too. I was like, whoa. It seemed, it was very, very well put together, and looks like everything's in order. Looks like a great job, and congratulations on your first appearance before the board.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Sean. Dennis?
3, Mr. Chairman. I just have a couple of quick questions, but I'm a little confused as to what you're here for exactly, because as I see it, it's just the replacement of the signs on the building themselves that really qualify as internally lit signs.
Well, we are here to have your blessing.
No, I understand, but these other elements that you're adding, the banners and the scrim on the garage, are they internally lit signs?
No, the scrim is not, and nor is the signage upon the existing light poles. For our sign code purposes, those, well, the ones on the poles in the parking lot are considered freestanding signs. So you're only allowed a certain number of freestanding sign for the amount of frontage you have.
Signage.
So because there's
So it's two
a
things.
number of poles that end up being labeled as a freestanding sign, they exceed the number of freestanding signs you're allowed per frontage that you have.
Okay.
So that was one item of relief. And then you're correct in terms of the illumination, it's really only on top of the building replacing what's there. It was just a requirement of a prior approval that any change had to come back in front of this board.
So the banner on the garage is actually a sign?
On the garage, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a, as you noted, a scrim, so it is a sign that you can basically kind of see through in a way if you're in the garage. But we do count as a wall sign, and I believe it does meet the size requirements.
It's huge.
I think it was because of the sizing that we wanted to just make sure that it was
It
okay
is.
to stay for more of a permanent basis until it starts to wear and tear, until it needs to be replaced.
What is the lifespan of that polyscrim material, do you think?
It depends on the way the sun hits it and how it in the wind and how it's
kinda do
reflected.
south
But
there a little bit,
usually it can stay, between 5 to 8 years without
You
being
think so?
replaced. So
It is big.
it is.
It is bold and it is big. It's a nice graphic, and it brightens the place up for sure.
We needed to cover the garage a little bit. It was kind of dark.
Well, I think you're making a good statement. I mean, you're right, it did need a little bit of a shot in the arm there, and you've provided that on that side especially, so. And I love the fact that you're using LED as always, so thank you.
Thank you.
Van.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I agree with my colleagues. This is straightforward. Petition, the signs, it's really, especially the one covering the garage, it's really out there, but it's a bold statement, and I guess it's a PR marketing strategy. And I was just curious, those individual banners for the light posts, how many in total will there be in that? Just curious.
The number's in the document. Hold on, let me just double check.
Is it just 6? Is that?
No, the 6 are the entry banners coming in from the Chelmsford Street side. And then within the parking lot itself, there are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 11, 22 total, because there's 2 on each light. And currently there is maybe 12 up, because we've added 6 so far, just for wind testing, to see how they were going to react before we went forward and upon your approval to keep them going and adding more.
Yeah, I think, like I said, that's a great marketing PR strategy. UMass Lowell has something similar. I know the city designated a certain part of this area as a designation. They have some banners there, so overall, I think this is pretty straightforward, and anytime you can switch from neon to LED is always a good thing. So
Great.
I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Okay, so I agree with comments from my board members, and I appreciate the overview. Like I stated in the beginning, when I saw the garage, I like the color scheme. I think it's very attractive, and it's a good change. So you're here for both a special permit for illuminated sign and for a variance for wall sign and freestanding signs. I don't think we need to, unless somebody wants to, condition the timing of the illumination unless we've done in the past. We do have a condition. It's the same as, the previous, but I don't think that's necessary unless somebody wants to add it. Dennis says no, so Dennis is in charge, so the answer is no. All right. So, I believe the applicant has met the conditions and prerequisites for both the special permit and the variance. And with that said, we'll take 2 separate votes, right, Joe?
Yes.
Yep. So could I have a motion, please, on the special permit?
Through Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for ZB 2014-053 for a special permit for Crosspoint Associates LLC at 900 Chelmsford Street for internally illuminated signs.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Bailey?
Approved.
Mr. Callahan?
Approved.
Mr. McCarthy?
Approve.
Mr. Palia?
Approved.
Mr. Peck?
Approve.
Okay, the special permit's been approved. Could I have a motion, please, for the variance?
Through Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for a variance for ZB 2014-053 for Crosspoint LLC, 900 Chelmsford Street, for a variance for the wall sign.
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Do I have a roll call?
Mr. Bailey?
Approved.
Mr. Callahan?
Approved.
Mr. McCarthy?
Approve.
Mr. Palia?
Approved.
Mr. Peck?
Approve.
Okay, so you've been approved for both the special permit and the variance. And keep
Okay.
up the good work.
Thank you, and I will see you all shortly.
Great.
Have a great night.
Yep, thank you. Okay, our next matter before us is ZB 2014-54, the petitions of variance. The applicant is, and I'm going to try to do my best, Ryaz Shaikh, 50 Coburn Street. The petitions of variance for an accessory building, a shed, to be located within the front and side setback pursuant to sections 5.1 and 5.2.41 of the zoning ordinance. So, do me a favor. Can you pronounce your name for me, please?
Hi, my name is Riyaz Sheikh.
Okay, thank you. So, sir, can you tell us, so you're here because of a shed you put up, and can you kind of give us a background of why you put it up and how did you select the location that you did?
First of all, I apologize. I wasn't aware of any setback requirement.
Sure.
I checked online that I can build maximum 120 square feet, 12 by 10 shed. So I built it. That was the looks like right location at my property. So that's why I built it. So I took almost 4 months to build that thing by myself. And at the end, I got notice. I was surprised that I wasn't in setback requirement. So I apologize for that. So the way I built, it won't be able to move, and I use the heat gun, so it's impossible to remove everything.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have to move, I have to tear down
Yep.
everything.
So you built it nice and sturdy, huh?
So
Yeah. Okay, so
I'm
pretty much you
not-
decided you wanted to build a shed, and you did it by yourself, and you weren't aware of,
I wasn't aware of
Yep.
anything.
yep, okay. Anything else you want to tell us? So the purpose of the shed is obviously to store,
Yes, I bought the house in 2009. At that time, I was only one person by myself. Then my girlfriend moved in.
Yep.
And we have 2 kids now.
Sure.
And I have my parents. They came from India, so we have 6 people in 2-bedroom house. So I needed more space. So I was going to finish the basement with a bathroom. That's why I decided to build a shed so I can move all my stuff to the shed.
Sure.
That's why.
okay. All right. Did you have something you'd like to say? No? Okay. All right, anything else you want to add at this point?
No.
No? Okay. So I'll open it up to the public. Anyone here would like to speak in favor of this petition? In favor? Yes, sir? Name and address, please.
Good evening, Chairman, some members. My name is Zahir Nakri. I live at 42 Coburn Street, so very next to his home.
Yep.
And I just want to say that, as he said, he built by himself. So I have seen him doing all the hard work. And in fact, at one point we had even discussed on that there is no need to take a permission for that because he checked it online. And the way it's been built, in fact, the property itself looks beautiful, and there is no way or shape, it's impending anything. So I'm completely for it. And I would even, in fact, request you guys to don't do anything with it because one guy built the whole thing. It took 4 months, and it's completely stationary. It's not something mobile which you can just move in.
Sure.
And the way it's in the property, I think that was the right spot, and I don't think it's going to affect anybody in terms of view and everything. So I would say please let it be there.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Great, thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak in favor? Yes, sir.
My name is Helson Navarro. I live right next door. I saw him doing all the work.
And when you say next door, which house are you in, sir?
Number 8. He lives in number 6. I live at number 8.
Okay, okay.
And the shed house looks pretty safe. It's anchor grounded to the ground. It's the wind won't blow it away.
Yeah.
And if you go online on the city hall website, and it says it cannot go over 160 square feet and not over 16 feet tall. And all those, all the measurements, and he has everything under, and it's inside his property. It's maybe it's away from the streets. It's safe. It's not, I don't think it's any problem. I don't see any problem from my point of view as living next door. And just like he said, he has a blower, snow blower. He has the grass machine. He has a lot of stuff. He needs the place to store. And that's just speaking in his favor.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming down. So, as I've done with most of the petitioners this evening, we received, so I'm going to assume, Joe, that this gentleman didn't receive Lisa DeMayo's comments either, right? Since the date of the 14th.
Yeah, it's possible. I'm not entirely sure.
So we received a couple of comments from the city engineer. They took a ride by your property, and this was on October 14th that the memo was written up. And I'll read them to you just so you know. It says the plan submitted in the application has 3 pages. Only one is stamped. This plan clearly states this plan shall not be used for boundary determination or relied upon for the installation of fences, additions, sheds, pools, or improvements. So the stamping would be by engineer, correct?
Or a surveyor.
Surveyor, yep. And then the second bullet that Mr. Mayo submitted was the 2 other pages that note the location of the shed are not stamped. We have no way to determine the accuracy of the submission. Okay. Well, I'm not going to speak for Lisa DeMayo, but I think all she's reporting back to the board is in your package, you did submit, obviously, the application form and the reason for what you were doing, and then you'd also supplied some other documents, of which there were, for instance, your mortgage inspection plan, and there was a few other documents. The city engineer was just pointing out, for our reference, that a couple of the pages were not stamped by either, as Joe mentioned, a surveyor.
Reason why I build a shed by myself, because I don't have that much money to hire someone and build a shed, So I didn't have money to hire the, what is this called? Certified planner to do this.
No, I think the board
I built everything by myself, every plan that I did.
Yep. No, I think the board understands what you did and what the city engineer is just reporting back to us. The other thing I wanted to mention, so these 2 gentlemen came before us in support. We also received a letter dated August 26th. My name is Rosanna, so I'm going to read this in the record. My name is Rosanna, I think it's
he lives,
Hoke or Hock, H-O-H-A-K or H-O-K.
Yeah.
And my husband, Hung. We reside at 49 Coburn Street, Lowell, Mass. We have no issues with our neighbor building a shed. Please contact us. So I just wanted to read that into the record. So you had 3 residents, neighbors
all
that are
inside.
all supporting you. So I just wanted to read that in. Okay. Was there anybody here in opposition? Opposition? Hearing that portion of public hearing is closed. So I'm going to open it up to the board members. Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My only concern when going out to the site and actually looking at it was that condominium or the duplex that is on Coburn Street, I'm wondering if people, if they were trying to back out of their condo, there's not a lot, doesn't seem to be a lot of visibility. And I don't know if that's one of the addresses that you live at, or there's also no one, I believe, from that development
Because-
here to speak against this, so.
Exactly. But I think there is a picture, I just saw he had it. And if you look at the picture, you will get an idea what I'm about to say. I live in the center condominium, in the condominium building you built. I live in the middle one. And I work, obviously, so I back out.
So your address, you live on Coburn
The
Street?
one you just
one that I'm
mentioned that
referring to.
who might have a problem looking at the traffic while backing it out. I live in that condominium, the center, one in the middle. And if you back out, there is nothing which, restricts your sight. And if you look at this picture, maybe it will give you more idea from that. Because I do it every day. I have I have a daughter and also wife, and they also back out, and I don't think that should be a problem. Pretty sure. Or maybe if you want, I can take a picture from backing it out and submit to you guys just to see that it doesn't block the view of it. No.
No, and that's fine. Actually, I just misunderstood you earlier, and I thought you lived on Baharel, or where?
I live exactly.
But you're on Coburn. You're in the building that I'm referring to.
Just
Yep, okay. No further questions or comments, Mr. Chairman?
Okay,
Thank you.
Sean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any questions or comments. I do want to thank the petitioner and his neighbors for appearing today and speaking their minds on this, so thank you.
Thank you. Dennis?
Through Mr. Chairman, I just have a question, so you understand it. You didn't provide a surveyed plan that shows where the shed is, and we're asking for relief from the 15-foot setback, for the front yard setback, and your plan does document 5 feet is what you're providing. So for the record, if it happens to be 4 feet, you don't have that. I mean, just so you know, that's what the documents are all going to say. I mean, just if we do end up voting on this tonight, we're giving you relief of 10 feet from the front yard setback. That's the way the documents have been submitted. That's all it means. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. It looks like you do nice work, though, for building the shed yourself. You did a nice job.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I think I can understand your confusion.
I never done anything illegal or because I built a deck that I built to, and I pulled the permit, and it was all legal.
Yep.
I did. So.
Good.
But I wasn't aware of this setback requirement at this time.
And it looks like your neighbors like you, so.
Yeah.
Good.
We've been helping out each other. So.
All right. I think I can understand your confusion with corner lots. They're a little tricky because you usually think the front yard is where your front door is, but you do have 2 front yards on a corner lot, so that's a little tricky.
Yeah, that was the confusion also.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Pam?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. I always think it's a good thing where you can get your neighbors behind your petition. In this instance, you built a shed, you need some relief, setback relief, and it doesn't negatively impact the abutters, the neighbors. So, overall, I think petition is fine, and, kudos to you to round up all your neighbors to support this petition. So,
thank you.
Best of luck.
Okay, thank you. Well, when I went to the site, I mentioned this to Joe on the phone, your residence is actually on the side street, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And yet, we're talking about Coburn Street. But where the, looks like there's like a bluish,
The 50 Coburn Street is, I guess, maybe 50 years ago. That's the old address. My
Yep.
actual address is 6 Bihar Avenue.
Yep. So not that this has anything to do with your shed, but do you have to put your garbage out on Coburn Street for them to pick it up?
Yes, yes.
Where's your garbage go? Amazing. Okay. All right. Well, and the thing I like about the picture is, but I was there where the two cars are parked. I went beyond there, so where this gentleman lives, I actually was sitting in my car in front of the parking area, just like looking back. And you own the fence all the way around the property, correct? Yeah. Because if I look at your shed, and then I look at the other homes on Coburn Street, you know, heading down towards, what's that, Lakeview, I think. I mean, the housing is all the way out to, like, the sidewalk.
That is right.
I know,
That's why
pre-existing and all that other stuff.
That's why I live 5 feet, because I saw all the house on the street. It's all away from, it's not even 2 feet to the fence road.
Yeah, not that, and that has nothing to do with
Yes,
why you're here
that is
this
right.
evening. I'm just pointing something out, because I know that, I think Mike asked about, you know, being blocked out, people backing out of there, but I think they get beyond that shed, and then obviously the city sidewalk is there. Those two trees, so those are in your yard, correct?
Yes, yes.
So Joe, I'm gonna assume where his fence is, that's his property line, because it looks like it butts the sidewalk there.
That fence was there like before I moved
Before
in.
you're even in there,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Well, I'm gonna assume that's the property line. Do you
Yeah.
know if that's where where are we talking about from his shed where the city's property line is then?
Without seeing the pictures or the fence that you're referring to, the fence could very well be on the property line and could.
Well, yeah, we don't know that. I'm just looking at, and that was one of the things I looked at when we were talking about how many feet away he was and how many feet he needed. But when I saw because when I first saw the trees and the sidewalk, I went, oh, is it the trees on city land? You know, is it that? Then it didn't make sense to me. But anyways, I know I'm belaboring the point now, so sorry. Well, I think this gentleman, you know, and I kind of figured this is how this one was going to go, that, you know, his intent wasn't to put something up and break the rules. I can see what would happen here. I think it's a well-constructed shed, obviously. I understand what the need was. I do understand it doesn't meet the setbacks, but you know, and this gentleman's here for a variance. And if we go to the, you know, the rules for the variance, I don't see any, you know, the relief being granted without substantial detriment to the public good. I don't see where it's going to harm that. And then, you know, the zoning being satisfied without nullifying or substantially derogating from the intent. I don't think the intention here was to break the law. Now, the special hardship, I mean, you know, I guess the real issue here is, you know, so Joe, when he mentioned, I think you went to the city webpage, or you said something about the square footage, or was it this gentleman? This gentleman I know mentioned it, but you said you checked out something first to see what the size of the square footage was.
How big I can build a shed that I don't need permit for it. So it was 120 square feet.
Yeah.
12 by 10.
Right. No, I just was, you know, for the thousands that are watching us tonight. So if a resident went and checked out something online or called the office and asked about dimensions of not exceeding, would anything be mentioned about where you're putting it, or?
Yeah, we get a number of phone calls throughout the year for people that are looking to construct a shed or have a prefabricated shed installed on the property. Usually asking how big they can go without a permit, and if there is any kind of setback from the property line. So we do get those calls fairly frequently. Occasionally people can look up online. Again, it can be a little tricky. As Mr. McCarthy mentioned, if you have a corner lot, you may not realize that you actually have 2 front setbacks, and you have to still adhere to the normal front setback.
Yeah, and I think that was explained in our paperwork too about, because it's on a corner lot, so, and that was kind of leading me up to the special hardship section about, the soil conditions or the shape or topography. I think that falls in line with this, so I think I'm hearing the board members, and I have to agree that I would grant the variance just based on the facts that were submitted. I don't know of any conditions. And I mean, the other thing about the size of what was built, which is within regulation, to me, it gave them more space. You said you have some children and stuff, so you got family area there. If you had to move it in, you're kind of taking up a good chunk of your yard. So, I can see where it made sense to put it where you put it, And you didn't put it up against the fence on either side. You didn't shove it in the corner. So, all right. Any comments for any board members? Okay, hearing none, could I have a motion, please?
Through Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for variance for ZB 2014-054 for Ryaz Shaikh,
Yes.
50 Coburn Street, for an accessory building located within the front and side setbacks.
Could I have a second?
Second?
Roll call.
Mr. Bailey?
Approved.
Mr. Callahan?
Approved.
Mr. McCarthy?
Approve.
Mr. Palia?
Approved.
Mr. Peck?
Approve.
Okay, so first of all, gentlemen, thanks for coming down this evening, and wish you good luck with your structure there.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Sure, you're welcome. Have a good evening.
Have a good night.
Yep, thank Thank you.
Sorry you had to be here for 3.5 hours.
Okay, our next matter before us is under other business, and it's the minutes for approval for July 28th, 2014. Any comments, questions, corrections?
One comment, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I reviewed the minutes, and it appears that one member that was present that day was missing. And my recollection, I believe I was here because that was my first board meeting, so.
Okay,
If we could move to amend
okay.
the minutes to note my
Well,
presence
I think
that
we
day.
did that as a test for new members.
But can that be
to see
done
if they-
administratively?
If they owned up to something. I guess he passed the test, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep. Thank you. All right, could I have a motion to approve the minutes of July 28th?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of July 28th with the addition of Sean's name being added as a member present.
Second the motion.
Okay, roll call.
Mr. Bailey?
Approved.
Mr. Callahan?
Approved.
Mr. McCarthy?
Approve.
Mr. Palia?
Approved.
Mr. Peck?
Approve.
Okay, so looks like our next meeting, Joe, is the 27th?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, anything else? Hearing none, make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second? Second. So moved.